all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Good afternoon. We're a day late, but sorry about that, but I had some work to do yesterday. Welcome to A-rated B movies and B-rated A movies. I'm Tom Connors. With me is the script doctor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful today, despite the daylight savings time. It's looking pretty good so far.
F
How are you,
daylight
sir?
savings times. That's all I gotta say.
Indeed,
I
yeah.
lost an hour somewhere. Nobody can tell me where it went, and I ain't too happy about it.
We
Sick of
shouldn't
people
be.
taking my crap.
We should all write our elected representatives and say, end this nonsense.
Well, look, I'm sick and tired of not having enough time in a day. They should add an hour to every day, not take one away every few months, then give us one lousy. It's the biggest joke in the world. But anyhow, happy Daylight Savings Day to those in the chat. I see we got some regulars coming in here. We got Tekkaman Blade, Corleone Rogue, Eric K's here, Hamdinger is here. That's right, I am here as well, Hamdinger. Daryl Brewer's here. Silver Shroud's here. Eric K, I said already. But welcome. War Monkey's here. Carries is here. Gonzalo Bergali's here. Donnie Pearson is here. Let's see who else is here. The Cheese Factor's here. Welcome, guys. Christopher Vos was in here way early. Welcome. Duck Nation's here. Thanks for being here, guys. Neil's here. Good to see you. Please hit that share button. I see Morgan King, Andre Enrico, Star Wars Nerd 8.2. Good evening to you as well. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So how was your weekend?
It was busy. How about, and I mean, your weekend did well. You dropped a video on
I
Midnight's Head with some
worked.
great news on Red Sonja.
Well, fingers crossed kind of news, but yeah.
Out with the old, in with the new. Why not?
At least this
Like the
individual
fourth time, right?
yeah, well, at least this individual has a much better track record. And they've
Yes.
actually worked within the, I guess you could say, the extended universe of Robert E. Howard, so
Well, she's a genre filmmaker, so that bodes better for her for a character like Red Sonja.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
there's even things that Andre didn't mention, like Silent Hill 3D and a few other things that she had worked on, so yeah.
Hmm.
Probably for good reason, but hey, it still matters. At least I'd rather have somebody who's worked in bad sci-fi and horror genres and stuff like that, or what have you, or fantasy, than the kind of crap that we get from like Star Trek Discovery, where their resume is full of Gilmore Girls and Gossip Girl and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, she's a better choice.
Absolutely, but that's neither here nor there. Speaking of better choices, I don't know if y'all out there have seen the Batman yet, but Script Doctor and I did, and boy oh boy, we're in the minority, but we're a few of the folks who just did not care for the film all that much. But what we do love is two classic Batman films, and I think we both agree that these are two of the most comic accurate Batman films. Last week we talked about the 1966 classic The Batman, and today we're going to talk about The Mask of the Phantasm, which came out in 1993, and was
It was a
originally,
Christmas release. Yeah.
yeah, originally intended to be a video release, but Warner Brothers changed their minds at the last minute. Too bad it didn't work out for them in the box office. But later on, the movie got a lot of praise, especially from Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, who picked it more than once, or they picked it once for their Laserdisc choice, and then Roger, I think, did a special segment again on it later on. So they brought it up more than once. And I think every time a Batman movie came out, they brought it up as well.
They usually did. Yeah. So this movie had an 8-month production time, which is really slim for a cartoon film.
Right.
And yeah, during after they had done a couple of the I guess the animations came back, the department, because it was not really from Warner Animations, from another department, and Warner Brothers liked what the script so well. They already heard the audio, because they record the audio before they do animation. That's just how it is. and they liked it so much that they said this has to be in film. So they told the animators, "Hey, yeah, this is going to be theatrical," and they were super happy about it. But then they realized, "Oh crap, we now have to start animating this for a widescreen
Yeah.
format."
So if you have the Blu-ray, it actually gives you both options, and you'll notice on the widescreen there is a little bit more on the left and right, but you're missing a little bit on the top and more so on the bottom. Or you can watch the 4:3 version where you're getting a little bit cropped off on the sides, but of course you gain a little bit on the top and the bottom. So it's kind of a
And there's a couple of
toss-up.
shots that were not reanimated for this,
Yeah,
so they were
yeah.
kind of rescaled. But yeah, only if you know
Only
this
a
movie
few.
so well that you actually care to pay attention to that.
Honestly, I flipped back and forth quite a few times watching it this time, and I actually preferred the widescreen version. It just seemed more cinematic. They did a good job filling out most of the shots. There was only a couple of shots.
There's two that I counted, and that's it.
That were really kind of cropped in. But even I double checked on some of those. I'm like, really, if you look back, they did a pretty good job on almost all of it. Like, and again, like with the widescreen version, you do get a little bit more on the sides because they filmed it in an open 35 format anyway, which, you know, for television, they do that anyway usually. But when you do it for film, generally the top and the bottom, if they do it, they just mean to crop it off anyway. So I'm sure a lot of times. Did with
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And
exactly, yeah. And there's been some other shows that now that they've remastered, they went back and opened up the mats on. There's been a few of them, but no, it's a really great film. Actually, I think I enjoyed it this time more than I have on any of the previous views. I gotta admit, I think I gave this movie a little bit more shortchange than I did before because, you know, being an animated movie, I think the first time I saw it, it just kind of like whatever. And then I watched it again when it first came out on Blu-ray like 6-7 years ago. And I kind of watched it peripherally. So I was like, yeah, it's good, you know. But then like this time I watched it because I kept flipping back and forth between both versions. So I technically watched it twice in the same sitting for the most part. And I enjoyed it so much more this time. I see where everybody's praise comes from. Like, because before I'm like, yeah, it's good, but it feels like everybody gives it a little over praise, but no, I totally
like it's a little bit too much nostalgia onto the
maybe, but no, I disagree. And this is me coming from somebody who's kind of watching it with more fresher eyes because, as I said before, I've never really like I loved the series. I watched the first few seasons, but you guys got to remember the series came out in '93 when I was 13 years old, so or 92 or whatever. So like when I was 13, 14, I kind of checked out by like 14, 15, and so there's a shit ton of the series I've never seen. And when I saw this movie on video as a younger, you know, teenager or whatever, again, I probably watched it with a bunch of guys and I barely remembered it. So yeah, I've given this movie a lot more shortchange than I should have over the years, even though I've never talked bad about it either. I just figured, yeah, you know, I remember the series being really good. And I just knew it was kind of an extension of the series. But watching the movie now, and I'm trying to remember because it's been even a couple of years since I've watched the series, was there even this much violence in the series as far as that goes? Because there was actually murders flat out in this movie.
In the series, there was some violence. Definitely in the first episode on Leather Wings, Batman's bleeding.
Yeah, but I don't remember anybody dying per se. I mean, did they? I'm trying to remember.
Well, I do know it's hard for me to really recollect because
this says there wasn't.
Yeah, most of the stories that Batman in the animated series told weren't really about murder mysteries. They're just about crime.
Exactly.
And
so, I feel like they did take a little bit of advantage of the fact that they knew this was going to be a movie as opposed to a series, even though it was going straight to video originally. Mm-hmm. I did feel that. Like, it did feel like they were taking like a little bit more of the adult road with some of the. There's a few lines in it too.
I'll put it to you this way: there's only one dead body shown that I can think of in this movie, and that's Sal Valestra.
That's true. But
everybody else, they don't see the death. They just die. They kind of die off camera, but not off screen.
Exactly. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So even for a cartoon, though, at the time, that's what kind of took me aback. It's like, wow. I mean, I remember the show being a little bit more adult oriented, but it still showed it, you know, normal time. during kids shows, because I remember
Around
it
like
had
4
to at least
p.m., yeah.
adhere to some of the. I mean, I knew things had loosened up by then, but I know it still had to adhere to a point. And of course, we learned later on in the series that because I looked in the trivia thing, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, because I was trying to remember where this came in, and like they do refer back to this in the series, because obviously we don't know what happens to the Joker. And then they do. I think this character does pop up again in season 5, if I'm not mistaken. It said.
I can't recall how the seasons were done because or separated, because the show
Yeah.
they dropped the first 60 odd episodes in the first season, so it's like it's a
Yeah, it
big.
was kind of like He-Man in
break it
that
up afterwards.
respect. Yeah. Because actually I was reading up on this again, and I guess at that time they weren't even sure they were going to have another season after this. So this was kind of set up as a finale, in a way, I guess. From
This
reading
was
about
intended to be the last, the crescendo of the Batman story that they were doing on the TV, because they didn't realize. Yeah, they had no idea if they were going to keep going on with the story. So there's a novelization, and then there's a follow-up comic called, I think, Shadows of the Phantasm, that explains that, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but basically the Phantasm has beaten the ever-living hell out of Joker, and because
Yeah.
he's laughing at it,
See, now I thought this was in an episode. I thought I read.
No, it's not an episode.
Oh,
no.
okay.
It's just thought that since the Joker's not the man that killed the Phantasm's father, lets him go, and they both managed to escape in some fashion through like the sewage tunnels that Batman escapes as well.
Okay, so that's one point of confusion I had, because like in the one scene, Bruce does figure out that one of the gangsters was the Joker.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that they were implying in those flashbacks that guy with the cigarette was the Joker, and that's why she was actually going after him.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so basically they retcon that in the comic, is what you're saying.
No. That the comic is how he survived, how the Joker survived.
Well, you just said she let him go because she thought he killed her dad, but he didn't.
No. She let her go because she realized he's no longer the man that killed her father.
Oh, okay.
Because
Sorry,
the Joker transformation completely changed him. So in the animated series, it actually builds off of the Batman '89 Burton film. It actually refers to Joker's real identity as Jack Napier. But eventually they decided to kind of slowly separate.
It does kind of skew into its own direction at the same time, but yeah.
Yeah. Again, like Shirley Walker, who was with Danny Elfman composing the original Batman soundtrack, she's the one that composes the soundtrack for this film and also for the animated series, and was doing it for most of the DC shows until she passed away tragically a lot earlier than anyone ever expected. And she really brings a lot to this to this film, because she has themes for each character that are very kind of distinct. She's got a distinct Joker theme, which is very twisted. And then she's got the theme for the Phantasm. She's got the theme for Bruce and Love's romance. She's got a theme for Bruce trying to figure out his Batman persona. All beautifully woven in together for this narrative, and she's kind of like one of the the post-production hearts of the Batman series and show. But yeah, this story is really, it's a love story. That is the heart of it. It's how, when love is impeded, it can turn people into vengeful, revenge-seeking beings. But this is also a great example of kind of like a PG way to get into classic film noir. So some of the writers of this movie, this is basically Alan Burnett's story, and him, Paul Dini, Martin Pesco, and Michael Reeves kind of wove everything together from some of the late 80s, early 90s stories of Batman into this film noir type story.
Speaking of noir, there's two things I thought of while watching this.
Okay,
I thought of how basically the new film is the Batman. The Batman is Batman Begins with a little bit of this sprinkled into it. Of course, that probably comes from the year 2 part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie reminded me a lot of A Touch of Evil.
Yeah. I can see that.
Now, I guess you know what I'm saying here. Okay, so
Well, it
like,
reminded me not just a touch of evil, but also Out of the Past. And
okay, I've
the
never seen
writers
that one,
even
so.
oh, you should see Out of the Past. It's great. And the writers also said they had a little bit of influence from Citizen Kane because it's and
Well, yeah, of
basically
course, Citizen Kane, and that's what kind of led me to Touch of Evil a little bit
well,
with
it's
the
because of
plot. Yeah,
the way that the flashbacks are flown in and how the flashbacks actually mirror what's going on. So you have this one scene where Bruce is he's spying on Andrea Beaumont and he's reading her lips in her conversation. He's outside in the rain and he's flashing back to the first meeting he has of her, which is at his parents' grave, I think, if I'm remembering the flashbacks right. Anyways, there's basically Bruce Wayne meets Andrea Beaumont at the gravesite of his parents while she's talking. They go away, they do their stuff, and then when she finally returns to Gotham, so yes, this is before the lip reading part. When she returns to Gotham and Batman's investigating the murder of Buzz, and he's by his parents' grave, kind of like paying respects, he overhears Andrea talking to her mom again, who's also passed away, and it's a reflection of that exact same first meeting, and that's kind of like a very interesting way to sort of weave in the the flashback and have the story keep on progressing as opposed to other genres that are outside of usually noir that try to use flashbacks and it kind of stops the story cold or detracts from the story completely. And yeah, that's one of the things that's kind of interesting is that the flashbacks actually parallel the active part of the story and then giving you information. So we're seeing two actual stories that are very intimately connected,
right.
playing out in two different times, and we're seeing them from two different perspectives. Mostly from Bruce Wayne's at the start, and then from Andrea's at the end.
Right, and that's where again, yeah, I get the Citizen Kane references there, and then like I said, with the Touch of Evil, it starts out like a Touch of Evil in a way, even though it's not a car bomb, it's a gangster dying in a car,
Yep.
and then it leads into this weaving mess of uh, you know uh, uh, uncovering who did it. And I mean, even though there's not a cover up on a cop's part of it, but there's still Batman technically is in his own way. Like this is kind of the first time you kind of see him, even though he kind of really doesn't have a choice because she gets away. But I mean, he really just he thinks she's dead, and so whatever. But like he really doesn't seem like he's trying to stop her, other than to kill the Joker at the end there. When he puts
Well,
it all
at the
together,
point when he
right?
finally realizes that makes the connection, there's no one left for her to go after for him to stop.
Right. Well,
It's
that's
like,
my point.
yeah,
Is like it makes me wonder. Is like, was he going to let her go? Right. Like that was, I guess, the question I was going to get to. Is like, was he going to, that one time look the other way and let this go, or would he actually be the Batman and bring her to justice? I guess was going to be my question. What do you think?
eventually I think he would have brought her to justice. He basically what he ended up doing, like when she's facing off the Joker and then Batman saves her from the thing. He's like, just go because Joker's not. The perspective that you can get from Batman is that Joker's not the same as the mob. That she like these old kind of dying, like these are mid-level organized crime bosses in Gotham. That's why Batman doesn't really give them a whole lot of attention other than like Dick Miller's character who's laundering the money in the casinos.
Right.
That's when he's starting to stop on him. But like Valestra and Buzz Bronski, yeah, any of their crimes that kind of go outside of their normal habit, Batman tends to get involved in, or at least that's what's implied with that first scene. Is that yeah, he doesn't really lean because Al Valestra says he doesn't really lean on them before. Why is he coming after us now? It's like, well, we had the only reason he came after that Dick Miller guy at the beginning, Chucky Saul, is because he discovered a massive money laundering campaign where you couldn't tell the real bills from the fake. I'm like, that's kind of big. Um, and then that kind of leads into everything else. But one of the things that I thought was kind of fascinating is because the Joker is such a he's not a normal criminal. He's a supervillain, a super criminal, maniacal sociopath and serial killer who also would have killed Andrea twice if Batman had not gotten involved.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he
Um,
kills at least 2 or 3 people in this movie. Yeah, from my recollection.
well, he kills Sal Valestra.
Yeah, we don't really know if the one guy, does he survive or not? The one
Oh,
that
the
got
Joker
toxin.
that talks him,
Yeah,
he probably survives because he's in the hospital.
probably, but still, like, yeah, like he gets that guy, and then yeah,
But yeah, like we already have two examples that Joker could have killed her, and then the third that Batman, actually, yeah, three times he almost kills Andrea.
well, he technically killed her dad before when he was Jack
Well,
Napier,
he
but
killed her
yeah,
dad, but like not only this, so he could have killed Andrea with Valestra and the bomb in Valestra's home, but uh, she just got out of the way by the skin of her teeth. The second part is the airplane bomb that he sent to her apartment that Batman
hmm
hears over the phone, and then the third time is the giant turbine engine.
right,
And so yes, so clearly she's out of her field here, and from that, because Batman was involved in two of those out of the three, because again, the first one she escaped by the skin of her teeth. Um, Basically, I was left to say that he's just telling her to leave because she will die if she tries to take it any further, and that basically it seemed like a pending "I'm gonna have to go after you later" type of thing to bring her to justice. And because she comes in towards the end and kidnaps the Joker and God know what to him, Batman is left to basically think that she's dead until he finds her locket in between a crevice in the cave. So
hmm
it's kind of like her message goodbye, where it's like he hasn't seen her for 10 years. She comes back. Her entire motive for this is coming back, kill the kill the four men that took her father and caused her to not be with Bruce, and hopefully try and rebuild that relationship once she completes her mission, and then blame it on her dead father because he's dead, and also it's because it
right,
was his negligence that led to this unhappiness that she's had for so long, and this grudge and this desire for vengeance.
right, and
That
it's
was
kind
her
of
plan.
a yeah, it's kind of a mirror of Bruce's journey, right? Like you have
Yes,
Bruce's journey where he's trying to make his parents proud because the
he's
whole
trying to
thing
give meaning to their death
and meaning to
and
their
do it
death and
without
all that.
compromising his own values.
And in her, on the other hand, she is in spite of him, like you said, using his clearly setting him up to, even though he's dead, to be the one to take the blame because it was his fault to begin with, going at it a completely different angle than Batman, but both coming from the same place, right? Like her mom was killed or dead or whatever,
Or her mom passed away and then her
and then her
dad was murdered.
dad was
Yeah.
murdered and they were forced to leave the country and all that kind of shit. So like, yeah, it's a little bit different scenario there, but it kind of looks like you could look at it like from Batman's point of view is like, if just things were just a little bit different, I could have been her, right? Like I think
Well,
that's
that's what
kind of where,
Alfred says. Yeah.
yeah, so like that's hit home pretty well in the film too. So again, like this movie hits on all cylinders, every note, and it's so quick, 76 minutes or whatever it is, you
Yeah,
know.
when you finish watching, you're thinking it's like a full feature film because it's dense, but you don't miss anything. But it's really just 76 minutes. It's really really tight, and that's what's kind of interesting. So the other part too is that all the characters that don't know how Batman operates, which would be Councilman Reeves, Andrea Beaumont, the Joker, Sal Valestra, all those guys, they all think of Batman as a crazy madman who's just after them and whatnot. And yet Alfred gives him this wonderful speech saying, like, you walk the abyss, you walk the edge of the abyss of vengeance and revenge every night, and I'm so glad that you don't do that. And that is kind
Right.
of the understanding, is that Batman is not this crazy person doing stuff. The people that think he is don't know him, and that's the whole point. That's a tool to Batman's advantage, is that they think he's crazy but he isn't. And the fact that these writers understood that gave us a very compelling and interesting Batman. The moment that you think that how the bad guys and the greater public think Batman operates, and you make that real to Batman, it loses the illusion of what Batman's trying to do. And this is also the first Batman film where Gordon and Batman don't have a scene together. They don't exchange lines or anything.
Well, he actually only has two scenes in the whole movie, and that was because from reading through the behind the scenes business, even they tried to avoid using as many of the typical characters as possible because they wanted to introduce newer ones into the film. So
Yep.
that's why there's very few of the classic characters, and even the Joker is used very sparingly.
It's
Uh,
Gordon, Bullock, the
yeah.
Joker, and Alfred, I think, are the
And
only
Bullock
four.
doesn't even have any lines, and he hides himself in the one scene when they're having the news conference. I noticed he's like
Yeah.
hiding behind his jacket.
Yeah, we don't even have Mayor Hamilton Hill, who oddly enough is that actor is the father of the guy who's voicing Councilman Reeves. That's Lloyd Bachner. So Hart Bachner is Arthur Reeves, and Lloyd Bachner is his dad. And Hart Bachner, if you don't know, he's the guy Booby from Die Hard, and
Yeah,
also
and you can tell.
Supergirl's boyfriend.
Yeah, you can tell his voice big time. Him and Dick Miller stuck out like a sore thumb.
Oh yeah, I mean Dick Miller's great. And
of course Abe Vigoda. I mean, like, how can not tell his? But like, yeah. But Stacy Keach was like his voice just kind of blended into the character, which was really nice.
Yeah.
So, but we got a couple super chats here, and we also have another guest joining us. So I'm gonna go through these right after we introduce Clobby back to the show. How you doing, Clobbering Time?
Hey, man! I'm so sorry it took so long, dude. I was out doing parent stuff. I didn't see the link to just now.
No, man, we postponed it a day, and we forgot to tell you it was my fault. So.
Oh, cool! I love this movie. So, hey, Script, good to see you, and good to see everyone. Hello, chat. Hey.
Yeah, we're just getting started here. Well, we got started about 20 minutes ago, but
gotcha.
Yeah, I got some super chats here I want to get through, and then we'll get your take on the film. Luca Rock says, looking forward to listening to the replay. Great movie. Have a like and a super chat for this excellent choice. Well, thank you for listening, Luca Rocks, on the replay. Even though you don't get to hear this live, you're probably working or something like that. But we appreciate the support, my friend. Then we got Toxic Man Flu in the house. Says, this panel is like peanut butter and chocolate. Well, thank you. Well, now we got a little extra here. So is it like crunchy peanut butter and chocolate?
I'm a peanut butter M&M, dude, because I love it.
You're a peanut butter. Oh, so no, you're like so you'd be like the Reese's in the peanut. Like those are like.
Yes, sir.
My God, I never thought in a million years. I saw those the first time. I'm like, that is dumb, because they're just the same thing inside the same thing.
Yeah.
Like it makes no sense. And then you have one, and you're like, this makes complete sense. I'm so sorry. I questioned it. I see the light now. I never thought I would. Mexican Iron Man is in the house. How you doing, Mikey? Says, listening in from the tax bunker. I'm so fired up for you guys to review this amazing movie as I listen in, while doing taxes. Go brother Tom and Script. And now Clobby is joining us as well, and I'm sure he would have sent you his regards if he'd known you were going to be here. This says Fox had Warner Brothers under a 5-year contract keeping Batman the Animated Series stuck at Fox for 5 years, which is why Batman the Animated Series took so long between seasons. Well, there you go.
Oh yeah, and then that all changed when they went over to Kids WB.
Yeah.
In 97, yeah.
I think so. Clobby.
Yes, sir.
So we got kind of into the basics of this. We kind of broke it all down a little bit.
I heard. I was listening on the way.
Oh, good. So you kind of already up to speed to where we were talking about here already. So tell us your reaction to this film. Like I said before, my first time seeing it, I just kind of didn't really pay it that much attention. You know, I really did give this movie the short end of the stick for too many years. Watching it today, I really, really did appreciate it so much more than I ever did before.
Oh, so cool.
I'm glad. I want to hear your take on it, though.
I remember how excited I was in the time leading up to this film when it opened in theaters around, I guess it was Christmas '94, if I'm remembering correctly, for only like a couple of weeks it was. And I got to go a few times, and I brought my kids at the time, of course, because we were all, huge fans of the animated series. And I couldn't wait for this, but I didn't expect it to be this good. I expected it to be just good because the show was great, But I can't believe how they were able to make it work on, a level of a film independent of the great series itself, and use certain elements of Miller's Year One without getting way too into it. For example, I love the fact that they just made up their own gangsters, and the gangsters are just very tiny aspect of the story because they get too obsessed with Miller stuff. I mean, I'm glad there's no Falcone and all these other gangsters that Miller whipped up. They came up with their own. This is a wonderful origin story. Again, touching on the best stuff of Year One, leaving most of it out. And the fact that they come up with the Phantasm story. When I first saw this, I thought, oh no, I hope this is not they're going to do Batman Year Two with that Reaper.
Caspian, yeah.
I hate the Reaper story. I hate it. I hate Batman Year Two.
And actually, they took the concept of the Reaper story and be like, this is how you actually do it.
I agree with that because, Denny and Tim and those guys know how to write Batman. Mm-hmm. And I just, I hear you both saying earlier, it's very short, and yet it packs a punch. that no 3-hour movie ever has with Batman in it, or even two and a half hour, whatever. It packs a tougher punch and a better punch, and of course, it gets Batman far more correctly than any live action movie ever will. And in not only that, any other animated show will. I mean, it's just you get a little bit of origin, you get a little bit of him starting out, and then you have a whole new the stuff with Andrea Beaumont. I was surprised how much I liked it because it was, it's animated series and film only. It's not from comics.
Yes. And one of the things that is a great staple when it comes to like the noir genre, because this is how you get kids into film noir. Like this movie is the greatest entryway into the seriousness of film noir. And one of the staples of it that I mentioned in other live streams is there's witty banter here. Like there's Alfred's line saying like, "Oh, I don't think you're insane at all. By the way, I finished polishing your gas balls and smoke grenades.
I put them in your tights." Yep. And
then I have Dana Delaney saying like she sees Bruce Wayne injured. She's like, "What happened to you? Fall over some loose cash?" I mean, that is the type of stuff that is kind of quick and clever that you get in a film noir. You cannot name any quote from the Batman that does that because it's not there.
Well, not only that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just say they make her smart because she figures out who he is pretty quick. All right, go ahead, Clive.
Yes. Oh yeah, I was just going to say that's exactly right. And Bruce Timm even talked about in interviews, and they actually had, I think, a making of on HBO way back then at the time or whatever, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where I saw it, where he's talking about, and he says, when we're making this film, I wasn't really asking, what would certain cartoon creators do necessarily. I was asking myself with certain shots and certain atmospheric modes of the film, what would Hitchcock do? Let's make it, let's make it actually look. Yes, it's animated. Yes, it's done in the style of the animated series, but let's take a cinematic, give it a cinematic feel to it. That's why it feels like a movie. You could chop a couple of episodes of the animated series and try to make it kind of feel close to a movie. But this, they knew they were working on a theatrical film. Like Sub-Zero really was kind of made for straight to video, which was okay and everything. I liked it all right, but it didn't play on theaters. This was made for the big screen. Unfortunately, only got a couple of weeks on it, and you can tell the difference between that and the series, which I love the series, as you know.
Yeah, it got a couple of weeks. It also had almost zero advertising for it. Like my dad read that this was in theaters on the paper before Christmas Day, and we went and saw it Boxing Day. And we saw it in actually a very like 1930s style theater that was actually in the sub basement of a mall. And so you walked in there and you got the same type of aesthetic deco that's in this movie was the entire theater. So it was really immersive. And it was kind of like a kismet experience.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was like a movie that my dad and I really, really enjoyed. And he was never huge on cartoon stuff. In fact, I never grew up watching any normal animated movies. In our house, he and my mom, they love showing me the stuff that they grew up watching and the things that they went to theaters for, which I guess helped with my education a lot quicker than others at my age. But he did watch the show with me every once in a while and be like, wow, this is way too good for a kid's show. And then when he saw that, in the newspapers, like, oh, there's a Batman cartoon movie from the animated series, and here it is. And he took me to it and he's like, wow, this is really, really great. And he was also the one to tell me that the woman singing this song at the end, that's Tia Carrere, because we just watched Rain World.
Yeah.
And he recognized the voice. So yeah, one of her rare singing occasions, she did sang the lyrics for that song at the end.
I remember Siskel and Ebert even gave it a very favorable review, both thumbed up, and they thought, wow, they were very impressed with it. Although one of them didn't like Hamill's Joker, but which I don't agree with him on it, but other than that, they were very respectful and gave it high praise.
And you know what's kind of remarkable is that this model that has happened, where you have the animated series, then you have a feature film debut. If they actually had done the advertising to say that this is a feature film debut, they would have basically defined the perfect structural model to have a live action series with a theatrical epic film kind of like, tentpole thing at the end. Because this follows in, we watch that first season of Batman, those first 64 episodes, and then you see this and you're like, they've somehow managed to make a very full, complete, well-rounded story overall. And And it's like, there it is. Between 92 and 93, they cracked it, at least on animation. Now, if you can do it for live action, the money will really roll in there. But yeah, they got very, very close to this.
Yes, and it's a shame it was not marketed better. It was only a couple of weeks in the theater around Christmas of '84. I was able to bring my young kids to see it. They already loved the show. Imagine that, a Batman movie you could bring kids to see. Weird, huh? Remember those days? Yeah, we don't live in different times now. I know it was animated, but still. Yes, so it's just, this is definitive Batman as far as a moving on a TV screen or a movie screen, animated series. In this film, when everyone says, when I criticize the live action Batman film, well, what do you want out of a Batman movie? I just mentioned this one.
Yeah, this weaves everything quite well. I mean, you have a great mystery, which is somebody's killing these criminals, which, the city's not really too upset about, but they are concerned over the implication that it might be Batman because of all he has done so far. And that's what people are worried about. And some are being given affirmation to their speculations of the character. And then you got good old James Gordon, who, unfortunately, in the only 2 scenes that he is in this film, says it's not Batman's method. He doesn't do this, and I'm not humoring you on your crusade to have your own conjecture become a reality when we know it's not.
It's one of my favorite quotes ever in all of movies. Is when Jim Gordon in this film says, "The Batman does not kill. Period. You want him? You go, Mr. Reed. I'll have no part of it."
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, just going through, because we haven't really even broke down the story aspect of it. We've been going through aspects of the story, but like, there's so much that goes on in the 76 minutes in this movie. Like, just one of the storylines that we've mentioned in the several that are going on, they would just pick that one and make a movie out of it now and make it 3 fucking hours. It's like, because because I even said there is, like, and it's obviously probably because of the aspects that are pulled from year 2, but like I said, the script, like, clearly, I'm getting really sick and tired of everybody, and sorry for those in the chat who did enjoy the new Batman movie. I'm not trying to say anything against you personally, obviously, but you got to say that nowadays with this kind of stuff. But like, that was what I was saying, is like, everybody's like, oh, this is new and fresh. It's like, not really. It's like Batman Begins. And then after watching this, I'm like, yeah, there's aspects of this in it too, but this did it better. And so did Batman Begins. So it's like, here we are again with like this situation. But like, again, I really feel like I wish I had paid more attention to this movie years ago, compared to today. 'Cause then I could have a little bit more to say about it. But because I would have watched it many, many, many more times over, like I had the Burton films and such. But like, again, this movie, because you brought up Hitchcock, and yeah, it does have some Hitchcockian feelings to it, but like Script and I had said before, there's clearly the Citizen Kane influence, but I also brought up Touch of Evil.
Yep,
and it's funny you mentioned
film noir, man.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Hitchcock, because I always felt like, even though Orson Welles directed Touch of Evil, it felt almost like a Hitchcock film. Yeah. Right, well, it felt like
Bruce Timm said that. So
yeah, it felt like Orson Welles trying to do Hitchcock. So, like, there is that aspect of it too, and again, like, all those elements pulled together, and so yeah, like, it almost feels like this would be a Batman movie if it was directed by Hitchcock or Orson Welles or something like that. I think definitely, and there's times I was sitting here going like, God, I wonder if this would have been better in black and white. But
well, you'd only correct one coloring animation issue with Andrea's judo scene with Bruce Wayne. That's the only thing black and white would have done to this. I mean, it does what it needs to do. You'd also kind of mute some of the Art Deco of the Gotham City backgrounds.
Unfortunately,
but man, I mean, the other part that's actually quite clever in this is how the Phantasm character, who is, we later reveal, is Andrea Beaumont. She doesn't do anything crazy physical to any of the 2 mob bosses that she kills.
Right.
Like, she's just kind of freaking them out, and her costume disguises much of her build. And it's funny. It's like, in animation, even the animators are thinking, oh yeah, we have to realize that Andrea Beaumont has to have a consistent size. So the costume kind of makes her look bigger than she actually is. And then they specifically drew the silhouettes of her father, Andrea, and Matt Reeves, as Councilman Reeves, to be similar, so that you didn't know which of those 3 characters would be the Phantasm in the end.
Well, and they really give you the they really give you the red herring with the voice, because Stacy Keach voices both her father and
And
Yeah,
yes, that's right.
she's doing this deliberately to try and make it her appear to be her father. But at the same time,
Right.
up until that twist, you're like, ooh, could Councilman Reeves be doing this to try and put it on a guy that he used to work for who vanished? But it's fascinating that a cartoon would pay attention to this and note it, and yet a fairly large budget Marvel movie starring a female lead wouldn't.
Yeah,
Because they really screwed that up with Taskmaster. Like they
terrible.
just did not. The compositing was bad. The idea that it's the same height as as, as Black Widow, and she's 5'3".
Yeah,
So,
this does a good job of making you
Oh yeah, this
unsure. You think
movie-
it's old man Beaumont, the whole time.
it does a really
Yeah.
good job of taking. Well, and that helps being animated, right? Because an animated film is technically made before they even start animating it.
Right.
So it helps that they go through all that meticulous stuff ahead of time. But that goes to show, like script, I think a lot of these films that we see nowadays would probably do better with a little bit more prep time. And how often do I say, and you probably agree or say the same kind of thing, and I'm sure Klobby thinks and says the same kind of thing, where it's like, this movie would have been great if it was just one or two more rewrites, right? Just to polish up here and there. Like, it's like if you just took that a little extra time, maybe on this end, then you'd have saved so much more other time on the other.
well, impatience unfortunately is a driving force with Hollywood because it does take a long time to make a movie. So not a lot of, and it's very expensive, just in pre-production alone.
Well, I'll tell you
So,
what, though,
yeah.
writing is the cheapest thing to do.
It can
other
be,
than-
unless it's an assignment, right? In
I
which
get what
case,
you're
it's
saying,
yeah.
but like
Yeah.
my point is, though, paper don't cost shit.
Well, it's
So
all done on a computer, so you don't even have
and
to worry
exactly,
about
well,
paper.
the point still stands is like, yeah, as long as you got the writer there's no sense in not doing it until it's right. And sometimes it takes another voice. I know you know that from being a script doctor.
Yeah.
And OC's curious. I know since you're a Canadian, is this movie streaming anywhere in Canada right now?
HBO Max.
Yes.
There you go.
So it's on HBO Max along with everything else there. Yeah, I know there's no issue. Like there hasn't been an issue for me signing up for it under the Canadian information I have, because before I did it through the US with a VPN, but recently I did a shot. And, yeah, it works. So
There you
if
go.
you're in Canada, and you should be able to get HBO Max. If just throwing
Excellent.
that out there.
Dave wants to know, speaking of animated Batman and Bruce Timm, how we feel about the Batman Caped Crusader produced by J.J. Abrams coming up. Yeah, I'm very skeptical too, my friend. And J.J. Abrams is one of the main reasons, and I'm not so sure Bruce Timm has it anymore, but...
Agreed.
No,
He is
I mean,
not at
yeah.
all. I don't think he does. I mean, that doesn't mean it won't be good, but the name Jar Jar Abrams on automatically is a red alert. And then Bruce Timm has not been impressed with me over the past decade. He's really been either just lazy or doesn't care.
He doesn't have that hunger anymore. None of the people do, and I don't blame them. I mean, these were guys who for 8 years have been working in animation until they got Batman the animated series, and now they had something to prove, right?
Right.
Now that they already prove it, it's like, well, they're competing with themselves, and you never. Well, not so much you never. It's very difficult when competing with yourself to actually pay attention to see how good you were that got you to the place you are now.
He's done some bad,
hard.
and he's done some bad stuff over the past 10 years, to be honest with you, just quite frankly. And I like him. I'm a fan of the guy. Now, Paul Dini can still write, so I don't know how much input he's going to have on this new one. It could be okay if they keep the W stuff out of it, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's the thing
but
like
that they probably won't.
Killing Joke and stuff like that. They
Spider-Man
added
Web Warriors. I know that.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, just like the stuff like they added to like Killing Joke and like where those kind of things went downhill.
Yeah.
Like, that's my
There's no
fear.
reason for them to add that.
None.
It's
In
terrible.
fact, I said it would have been better had they just done it as the straight story, released it as a short film, and put it either before BVS or just threw it on the Blu-ray or something like
It should
that.
have been those DC animated
So
showcases,
shorts.
those companion things that they had on the original line of the DC animated films, which were
Yeah.
before. With I think Jay Olivia is one of the guys that he's the guy that I don't have anything personal ill will to him, but like once he started getting involved, that's when the animated films kind of deterred from being good.
Right. Yes. Those shorts, some of those shorts are really good, at least the early ones. They're not, I mean, some of them, they're hit and miss. I've seen them all now. I found some of the ones I found in a weird place on HBO Max where they were not even advertised. You know, the Batman Death in the Family on there on HBO Max. It's about 20 something minutes long, and just a recap of Batman Under the Red Hood. And I let the thing go. I wasn't paying attention. All of a sudden, 3 or 4 of those DC shorts that I couldn't find anywhere are on that one, and they don't say anything about it. Sergeant Rock, Adam Strange, Death, and Phantom Stranger. So,
well, I know like that one Black Adam one was made up of a couple of shorts too.
Yeah, it did have some of the earlier shorts which were really good, like the Green Arrow one, the Jonah Hex, the Spectre. Those were good.
Yeah, the Green Arrow one was really good.
Those were good.
That was him trying to propose at the airport and having to save the young queen.
Yes, I like that one.
Yeah.
Neil McDonough.
Joe Pat 87 sends in $1.99, says Reeves Batman equals MOTP. Same
Mask
energy.
of the Phantasm.
Yeah.
Same energy. No.
I wouldn't say no. Not necessarily. I wouldn't say.
No, there's Reeves Batman.
There's way more energy, care, and understanding.
You mean Matt Reeves Batman? No, I thought you meant. I was like trying. It took me a minute. Okay.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can't be Christopher Reeve because no S there.
Yeah. Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, especially, they love Batman, and they know these are guys doing a Batman movie. Like, unlike anyone else doing any movie that is considered a Batman, that theatrical film, know the character inside and out and care about the character. This is so.
As I said earlier in the show, I don't know if you heard me, Joe Pat. And again, if you liked the new film, that's cool. I'm not trying to bash on anybody who did, but this movie did a lot of what that movie was trying to do in half the time and better. Basically, just take the Catwoman role and put it on what's her face, Andrea
Beaumont.
Yeah, it's basically the same kind of story. Like she's learning the same lesson that Catwoman does in the end. That you can't take vengeance on those, even though it's a little late.
She understands at the very end when she's like, Batman's like, "What will vengeance bring?" And she's like, "I thought you'd understand." And her having to say that and seeing that he's arguing against it, realizes that she didn't really know why he was doing this whole Batman thing to begin with. Because she has that line saying like, the only one, kind of following their parents' orders in this room.
The only one controlled by his parents is you.
And she doesn't realize how that's not it at all. Because and I think that's kind of very interesting.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it's because as I said at the beginning of the show, all the characters surrounding Batman on the public side of things think they know what Batman is, but they're completely wrong. And as a writer, you have to acknowledge that, because you cannot be sharing what the public sees Batman as. You have to get to the deep root of it, which is the relationship that Alfred has with Batman. And the fact that, Batman, he's a detective, a scientist, a fighter, and he's human enough to be able to give it all up for, someone that he loves. And I love the fact that that's what this love story is really about. He's kind of on his quest of the journey. And this one element that he didn't account for comes in and completely changes your world. And it's just like falling in love for the first time, where you're like, the world is normal, and all of a sudden this other person comes in, and now you are completely distracted by what is going on, and they're also distracted by what's going on as well, and you kind of get swept up into it by the emotions. And then you have to make a decision. Do you continue this relationship, or do you go back to what you were beforehand? And most people tend to continue the relationship because there's something of deeper value to it than what's before. And Bruce was ready to do that until certain elements came into play that took her away, and all he had left was his original plan. And that's kind of, the interesting catalyst that pushed him to that one extra,
Well, and he does attempt to try and have it both ways there in that one bit, and he even says it to Alfred, like, I can't do this.
Which leads into one like the best scenes where he's begging to break his vow to his parents, because he never thought he'd be happy. But the other part that's in that scene where he's kind of leaning against the window and he's saying that monologue, like, I can't be risking my life when there's someone waiting at home. A bat flies by. That's
what I'm talking about. Exactly. Yeah.
A bat flies by the thing just out of his view. Like, he doesn't catch it. And I'm like, ooh, that's really cleverly done. Like, who in a cartoon movie would ever think to really do that? Heck, who in most live action films would ever think to really do that for Batman? And it sets up, when he proposes to Andrea, and then all those bats just start flying out. And it's a literal dramatic point of two choices of life are being presented in the exact same scene. I'm like, wow, that is some really clever writing. I missed that.
It's so brilliantly written all the way through, and that Shirley Walker score is used to perfection.
It is.
Especially that scene you're talking about with the bats come out of the cave after she leaves him.
Exactly, well, yeah, but it's so brilliant because it's the first time you see Andrea like terrified, and all he's talking about the other day is like they weren't afraid of me. Nope. And Andrea wasn't even afraid of him when he was doing his martial arts, and she used that judo thing or jujitsu thing to throw him down, which incidentally enough is the same move that the Phantasm uses against Batman when he nearly tackles her on the rooftop.
I didn't even pay attention to that.
Oh yeah, like the fact it's all there, and I mean it goes straight into your old mystery and detective film noir type of things where once you finish watching it, if you watch it again, you have that new information. You're like, oh, I can make all these kind of connections. I can see exactly what they're doing, which is why it's the axiom writing is rewriting is really important.
And then HVP says Conroy is the only one to perfect Bruce Batman voice.
He made it his own. I'll put it that way.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I don't think Keaton did a bad job with it, and honestly, even though I don't care for his performance, Pattinson didn't do anything stupid. Like he just basically did what Michael Keaton did.
He didn't growl. I mean,
he just basically talked down like this, like Michael Keaton did, right? Like,
yeah.
Because if you do that part of your voice, nobody can really tell what it is, and that's kind of what Conroy's doing, really. Because when he talks as Bruce, he talks up here in his regular voice, and then when he talks like Batman, he's down here. Like so.
Basically, he makes the voice come from the collarbone area, like the top of the lungs, where you can get that really depth. More like the back of your back depth, as opposed to like the deep belly deep. Because he's not there. Because he does it from the top part so that he can actually use his diaphragm to project in that tone. If you try to go like really really deep. You can't yell with that voice, and there's many scenes in the Batman series where he has to yell. So you got to figure out, what's
like I said, you have to go down here.
Yeah,
basically, yeah.
He didn't pull the Bale thing. Yeah, he did all right. I thought the kid did okay.
Bale. That's why I make fun of that. Yeah, because like
he's almost like a pirate.
The dumbest voice of them all is Bale's. I'm sorry.
And it really actually damages the scenes he's in when he's really overdoing it.
Yeah. Swear to me.
Ugh.
And I'm not a fan of the voice modulator because that telegraphs too much wealth behind Batman if you only like ever heard about him.
I didn't mind Ben Affleck doing it.
I mean, I didn't mind it, but I'm like, Affleck could probably do a cool voice without the modulation.
Yeah,
but at the same time, at that point, it's like they've been doing the Bat voice for so long. At least it was something different.
Oh, it definitely was different. I had no problem with the differentness. Yeah.
No, again, but don't get me started on the Snyder shit. Yeah,
same here. Huh? Same here.
And Holy Hand Grenades. Yeah, I don't know if you caught the earlier part of the show, but I feel really bad for, and I've never really talked bad about this movie, as script will back me up on that, but. I just never really paid as much attention to it as I did this time. And I think I never really give it as much of a fair shake just because it was an animated film. I just always as an animated film, it's great. Because I could just kind of peripheral watched it the first time. And like I watched it barely on Blu-ray when I first got it like 6-7 years ago. And I just kind of had it on in the background. But like this time I basically watched it twice in a row. Because like I said, the script, I flipped back and forth through most of the movie. Watching like the 4:3 and then watching the 16:9, watching the 4:3, 16:9 scenes, just to kind of see the difference. And about halfway through, I'm like, you know what? I actually prefer the widescreen. There's a little bit more on the sides. Yeah, there's a little less on the top and bottom, but it's framed better and it just feels more cinematic. So for the most part, I did kind of watch it twice today, Holy Hand Grenade. But yeah, it was. I really should have watched this more often in my life. I really should have. Hey, we got Fatal J in the house.
It's also a masterclass in setup and payoff. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
I make up for it, Tom. I probably watched it over 50 to 60, 70, 100 times. I don't know. So many, I can't even count. I love it so much.
When's the last time you watched it, Fatal? Because, like I said, the same thing. Like I was just kind of kicked back when people would talk about it because I didn't want to badmouth it or nothing.
That set piece when Bruce is wearing like the ski mask and trying to stop those thugs taking all that merchandise, that was way more intense and better done than the car scene from with the Batman and the Penguin. I felt because there's actually like a sense of threat and danger to it.
Oh yeah,
I didn't feel with the Batman.
I like the Dark Knight Returns first part, but the second part kind of went. I mean, I know it's fairly close to the comic, but
yeah, I admired that they were adapting. They were doing an animated that is based upon the comic and making it a two-parter to flesh this whole thing out. I'm actually a critic of Miller's Dark Knight Returns more than I'm a fan of it, although I like a lot of it. I have a lot of problems with it, to be honest. So, but still, I admired that they did those animated into two parts where they were trying to get it all right, and it was okay. I mean, it's adapting the story that I have a lot of problems with anyway, to be fair. So, I like it enough, but it's nothing. I don't know.
I liked Christopher Drake's music in the Dark Knight Returns two-parter way more than I actually liked, because I did like the animated adaptation. I thought it doesn't deal with all the issues I had with this Frank Miller story, but
right.
I mean, the fact that it clearly establishes that this is divorced from normal Batman continuity. It's like, okay, right. I can accept it in that regard. That's not this is clearly a one-off. Unfortunately, Frank Miller never realized it was a one-off. Right. He kept on doing Dark Knight Returns Part 2 and Part 3, Master Race, and all that
horrible
stuff.
Yeah. But see, I think I more just appreciate the fact that they would do that. In other words, they would take that story with great fidelity to not only the story for the most part, but the art style. That was something at the time we weren't seeing. They would adapt the story and do their own thing. I kind of liked it. For example, I love Justice League New Frontier, that it would pay homage and really use the Darwin Cook art style look. Batman Year One used the David Mazzucchelli look, and Batman Dark Knight Returns, as Fatal J mentions, and that uses the Miller look. I like that they adapt not only the story but the look from the comic book that it is adapting. That needs to be done more often.
And then they did the exact opposite for The Long Halloween. It's not even the same story. It's not even the Tim Sale animation style. It's nothing.
Yep.
And I honestly hate what they do to Superman in Dark Knight Returns.
I hate it.
Me too.
That's my biggest problem.
A whole nother point of contention for me. But
that's my biggest problem with it.
It is. You're right, Claudia. Because it's the Millerism approach. Like, Superman, the most powerful being on Earth, and he's just going to be cucked by the U.S. government. It's
you have to have a reason.
Not Superman at all.
It's Elseworlds, but
you have to have a reason.
It's Elseworlds, but it tainted a lot of things that came after it. But yes, I have. And by the way, the first two issues of that comic are really damn good. The third issue kind of falls, and then I just couldn't stand issue 4. And yes, it was a time when it wasn't a quote unquote graphic novel, which it wasn't anyway. It's a trade. It was 4 separate comic books. Just so those.
Yes, it is.
Those not old enough to know.
And John Apocalypse has a great question here, and I'm glad I have two of the best people to answer this for me. Because I could answer it for you, but it'd take me 12 years, and these guys will be able to do it so much more eloquently and concise. Never got the idea that Bruce Wayne was the Mask. Who wants to take this first?
Well, you're a very astute person, John Apocalypse.
Yeah. You mean the Phantasm?
No, I mean just in general, like
the character of Bruce Wayne, like in a pantheon.
I want to make sure.
See, and this is let's let Script go first, because you say he's actually 3 people, which people forget.
He's one person. He's Bruce Wayne, but he
has 3 personalities or whatever, basically.
No, it's one person who basically plays 2 roles to the public. Because who he is between Alfred, that's the little boy that grew up to become the man, and then he plays the role of Bruce Wayne, the billionaire playboy in public. Kind of just as a deterrent to connecting him with Batman, which is another role he plays, where he's basically the no nonsense detective who, when push comes to shove, he will break every bone in your body if he has to, but doesn't want to. Like, he's got a conscience that he tries not to telegraph to any of his opponents that he ends up facing off with. But no, Bruce Wayne is a core character. He existed first. And he grew up not knowing what the heck Batman is going to be. And even if you take a look at, say, Darwin Cook's Batman Ego, it actually kind of challenges that idea where Bruce Wayne actually comes to terms realizing that, no, this is not a The creature that I created, Batman, is not really a part of my psyche. He is just a tool that I use, and I am the one that's actually always in control. And yeah, like Bruce Wayne is not billionaire playboy. Bruce Wayne is a mask. Batman is a mask, but the core character of Bruce Wayne is not. And you, in some really better written stories, you get understand that with his relationship with Alfred, and to a little bit with his relationship with Silver St. Cloud in the 70s. They try to like explain this in that way. And gosh, there was probably another. Oh wait, a little bit of that actually, when Catwoman retires from being a criminal and tries to be rehabilitated until the Joker brainwashes her again. There's a little bit of the real Bruce Wayne coming through in there, and these are like accidental aspects that came of the writing of Batman in those days until later on. Other people who not so much write Batman, but other screenwriters that I know and myself, and good old Klobby here realized, oh wait, yeah, Batman. The mask persona of Batman is not what's in control. It's just a crime fighting tool because Bruce Wayne is the crime fighter. Like Bruce Wayne uses his billionaire playboy status to also get information to stop a crime that might be being committed down the road. There's value to those two roles that he plays, and that's it. It all just stems back to the core of Bruce Wayne.
Agree with all that. I absolutely agree with all that. He is Bruce Wayne at his core. Now, again, Batman is a substantial part of it. I mean, but it is an escape. It is a tool, like you say. Batman's part of his soul, though. I mean, it's in his soul. He maintains the humanity of Bruce Wayne all through it and stuff. Now, then there's some iterations and some writers who don't agree with that and don't write it that way and don't write the character that way. And that's when you get your Bat Bros from. I'm not going to go after the Bat Bros right now. They all know who they are. We're obsessed with one thing, Batman. And because I'm not too fond of that.
Well, and it makes no sense for Batman to be the real person because that goes against what Batman is trying to do.
Yes, because the humanity facilitates Batman's success. That's the thing. The obsession is doomed to make it fail. And sadly, I mean, and I understand why they don't do this in comic books, or at least hadn't done this in comic books for decades, because they realize, oh, we can't really have an end game here because that'll hurt sales. But the type of story that you want to tell, especially either in a limited series for Batman for comics, or maybe in live action or animation, is that Batman has to eventually succeed. There has to be a progression. And what we're only getting really, especially in the last 20 years, is the only progression we're getting in Batman is that he's recruiting more people in his quest to save Gotham and the world, yet nothing has changed in Gotham and the world. And it kind of takes the fangs out of Batman.
It's hard to argue that he's not making things worse on top of it all.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the Bat family thing either, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the hiccup with the comic book model that they've had is like, well, one of the things I did like about the older days is that Batman would stop a villain, and then we wouldn't see that villain for a very long while, because there would be new stories and new villains to things. They're like, oh, okay, that's cool. But in the last, I would say, since the early 90s, the villains are far more frequent, and then if they bring up new ones, they're in it a lot. So that was kind of my take.
Moore kind of explored that a little bit with Rorschach. So, when Rorschach he stops being Walter J. Kovacs after a while, after he has that that thing with the kidnapper bit, if you remember Rorschach's origin.
Oh, yeah.
And then he later regards himself as Rorschach. The Rorschach mask becomes his face. And when they take his mask off, he says, "Give me back my face." Mm-hmm. He's no longer Walter J. Kovacs. That didn't happen to Bruce Wayne. If it happens to Bruce Wayne, that's when he's totally lost.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of... I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one thing I did notice with Watchmen that I saw was Night Owl and Rorschach are kind of two different parts of Batman, right?
Yes.
Two different parts of Batman, a little nod to Superman and the Question as well. Like lots of cool little things woven in.
Well, Superman's more in... what's his face?
Dr. Manhattan. But yeah, you're right, though. They're based on the Question and Blue Beetle, but they're really based on like two sides. They're two sides of Batman.
Yeah.
One's gone too far and he's fallen into the abyss, as they say, and he's Rorschach now. He's not Walter J. Kovacs anymore. Walter Joseph Kovacs. And whereas Dan Dreberg, who's never went over the deep end with it, and he still stayed Dan Dreberg, even though he's...
What's funny, though, is at the end of the story, Rorschach is the only one who does the right thing.
He is at the end. Yeah. Don't get me started on the movie though.
But that's also because he has. Honestly, I like the ending of the movie just fine. I think the movie ties up the ending much more succinctly than the book does. The book is good. Don't get me wrong, because the book is one of my favorites. Like between that and Kingdom Come are two of my favorite graphic novels ever. But like,
come on with it as a guest with me one night, and we'll.
I know you and I have had this discussion before.
You know, I hate the movie. The ending of the movie. I like the movie.
I just, to me, the whole squid monster thing made less sense than Dr. Manhattan even accepting it makes complete fucking sense with his character, and it gives him a good arc, I think. But I can understand some arguments to be on, and I'm sure I could accept some too. So, like I said, I love the original, not graphic novel. Like it's damn near perfect as far as I'm concerned. So yeah.
Yeah, Snyder promised to adapt that and then lied, and I just hate that ending. But that's okay. That's great. Some people do. There you go. I mean, I like a lot of things in the movie, but it has its problems too. But I still
to
like
me, it makes more sense going along with the whole. And again, I don't want to go on a tangent with this, but to me, it makes more sense going along with the whole idea that people are afraid of Dr. Manhattan to begin with, and adding aliens to the mix just adds a whole nother layer to it. That's
like,
I mean,
please,
I know
Dr. Manhattan,
fake,
save us.
Exactly, like that was. Yeah, like
I can't do it. We'll be here an hour for me explaining why that ending doesn't work. But
the script doctor just made a good point, though. Is like if you have that alien, then people are like, well, why didn't Dr. Manhattan just save us? Exactly, that was what I said.
Dr. Manhattan made no sense, but
it made more sense to me, especially with the way he was acting, and he was accepting of it. See, like it made sense to him, like the whole thing with Anyway, but we'll get into it. This is a good conversation.
That'll be another good discussion. Yes.
But back to the Batman Mask of the Phantasm, though, because let's wrap this one up. Again, I should revise my rating for this film. I think I gave it an 8 initially, and I definitely got to bump it up to a 9 or a 10. I almost should give it a 10. I feel embarrassed, because it is damn near a perfect film, if not a perfect film.
Well, I mean, the thing is that it resolves the main aspect of the story. The public image of Batman is also implied to have been restored with the attack on Councilman Reeves, because he was attacked by the Joker and not killed, kind of sends a message to investigate him. And there was a follow-up comic book for that. I mean, I would have preferred, like in a perfect world, we got maybe 5 more minutes where you get that Gordon is giving a speech to the public, like, you should have listened to me. I told you I was right. It wasn't Batman killing these people. It was this Phantasm guy that blew up, Gotham State Fair.
Yeah.
And Reeves was somehow involved. We've found paperwork implementing Councilman Reeves' association with these mob guys that all died. And now so the Batman is exonerated. And good day, sir. I would just love to have heard Gordon say, good day, sir, and then turn around from the media cameras and walk away. Total mic drop moment.
Well, the only thing that's really left open is the fate of the Joker. And you don't really need an answer, right?
You don't, because the Joker's been, quote-unquote, killed in the comics and always came back somehow.
Well, you could have just assumed she went and dropped him off at fucking Arkham for all you know. You know what I mean? Like, you could just fill in the blank, and I mean, knowing that the series is going to carry on, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, in this point, it's not that important to the story overall, really. I mean, it is to a point, but when you think that, at first Batman thinks both of them die anyway, and then you realize that she's still alive, so that means there's a good chance the Joker's still alive anyway, so...
And we, the audience, when we see Andrea on the cruise ship, know that, if she survived...
Exactly.
And the Joker is possibly able to have survived as well. But we don't know until he appears again. And,
and they actually kept the audience guessing, from what I read, that they actually kept him out of the series for a good 5-6 episodes or something like that, they said.
For a while. They even did one where Joker fakes his death, and then, because he's kidnapped the mayor, but he doesn't go to rescue Harley at all. and that's what Batman uses to thwart Joker's problem.
Well, no, I haven't watched the series in a while. I got the Blu-ray set, but I just, like when I first got it, I think I threw on an episode, like the first episode.
Yeah.
And just watched it. I'm like, oh, that looks good. Because I remember watching this a couple of years before that came out. So I was like, I already kind of knew what it was going to look like, so it wasn't like a big deal to me. And I think I watched some of the special features, and then I just like whatever afterwards, because I never have time to watch anything. But I'm definitely going to try and work this back into my schedule of things that I can try and watch when I get a chance. So being it's a half-hour show, it's a little nicer to be able to It's
Okay,
a little
so
easier to throw them in. But
Yes.
yeah.
it is. Yeah, they're
Nice and
great
quick.
episodes. Claudia, you and I were gonna do a thing on
Yeah, we
that
talked
before,
about
but
that. Yeah.
we should actually figure out doing that. But I just want to address a Green Monsters prod comment because I totally get where he's coming from, but the thing is that it's not Batman's responsibility to kill off the Joker. Technically,
Right.
it's the legal system and the government to do that, because that's how Batman operates. He actually works in the same vein as Sherlock Holmes does. So Sherlock Holmes is not an actual detective; he's a chemist who does consulting with Scotland Yard. Like that's his profession is in chemistry, but he helps and he's a consultant with Scotland Yard. Batman is essentially a detective who, for all intents and purposes, is a consultant with the people in Gotham PD that are not corrupt, that are holding on by a thread to do their job and trying to keep the city safe. In many cases, Batman is operating and solving crimes without police even knowing about it until the end. But it's really primarily like with the Joker is captured, it is up to the people that detain him to first, try him for his crimes and sentence him accordingly. The only reason he doesn't face trial is because of this terrible legal loophole which exists in the real world, which is called criminally insane. And so because of that, they put him into an insane asylum without the need of a trial. So he just goes in and out. And because the insane asylum is not properly run and it doesn't have the greatest of security, and even if it did, it probably wouldn't matter too much, the Joker escapes to commit again.
You would think Bruce would just open up a new asylum to kind of compete.
I mean, that would kind of be brilliant, like Bruce Wayne mental care facility.
No shit, right?
And like no one can escape.
Maximum fucking security. Sorry, pardon my French, but
the idea is that because Arkham takes these criminally insane characters, they're paid for by the state, so they are facilitating their own corrupt nature because otherwise they'd be handling
they'd figure it out after a while, right?
Yeah, they'd be handling more mentally disturbed people and trying to rehabilitate them or trying to figure out a way if they could be integrated back into society. With characters like the Joker, the Joker is actually, and I said this before, the Joker is not insane. He is just manipulating the system. He's kind of doing a little bit of what Batman is doing in the sense that he is projecting a sense of chaos and false aspects of his personality in order to game the system into his own advantage. And it fools the Batman to the point where Batman does think that the Joker is completely sane or mad. And I think it's because he's blinded by the visualizations or the actualizations of Joker's crimes to realize that the Joker does all these things for very twisted reasons, but he's very cognitive and he's very conscientious about what he's doing and why he's doing it. And that is not usually what an insane person.
Well, he's trying to drive Batman insane. Is what he's trying to do.
Well, yeah, that's one of his motivations. Most of Joker's stuff is very self-fulfilling. Like he wants a diamond one day, but it's fleeting as well. Like that's what allows the insanity.
Or like what happens in this movie is really kind of a perfect Joker joke. Like he's asked by Abe Vigoda's character to protect him and kill the Batman. And he's like, well, I'll fucking kill the Batman anyway, so I'm going to kill you while I'm at it. Like, I mean, that happens off screen, but I guarantee you that's what happened. Like, because that's what the Joker is like. He's like, well, I'm going to do that anyway. So.
Well, he's very instinctive. So whatever feels good at the time, he will do.
And I love how he kind of played off of, how the Batman's he kind of did something the way the Batman would, only, Batman wouldn't kill a guy, but he set up the Phantasm by killing Abe Vigoda's character and then setting up a camera, and he's like, "Oh, you're not Batman," and because I think he already kind of had a feeling that it wasn't, because he
was hoping it would be because
because he's like, maybe I finally drove him over the edge.
Yep.
Because like that's not the thing that drives the Joker getting Batman insane. That's just one of many things that Joker wants to do. At whatever moment he decides he wants to do it. Like that's the thing that's kind of fascinating about this character. But I mean, one story I wish someone would explore, because I'll never get the chance to write the character, would be the one, district attorney that says, I don't believe in the Joker being criminally insane. I want him to face an actual trial with the sentence of death. And
well, there was
And
You have
there's
someone
attempts, right? Yeah.
Yeah, someone in the chat mentioning, excuse me, a very good Chuck Dixon story where the Joker was on death row and Batman was actually trying to get him off of death row because, well, Chuck's Dixon, so long as it's called Batman Devil's Advocate.
Yeah. Oh,
and
gosh, yes.
that would be a great animated film, but that's one that someone, Dave the Impaler, mentions in there. That's a great story.
No, that's a great question, Green Monster Prod. And actually, there's the moment in this movie where Joker's like, "You're going to kill us both," and he's like, "If that's the way it has to be." So I think if he's going to do it, it's going to be both of them at the same time is kind of what he's saying in that point. But otherwise he'd rather not. But like, yeah, I mean, I think he kind of knows that what he's up to, but still, I think at that point though, he's kind of telling the Joker like, yeah, if it's going to be that way, it's going to be both of us. And yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's basically because that fits in line with Batman's motivation, which is he doesn't just want to, like, he doesn't really want to beat up criminals. He just wants to stop them and deter them from being criminals. He'd much rather save them from a life of crime than have them kind of continue to do what they're doing. One, like in a lot of the comic books and even in the Batman show, he usually presents himself as like saying to the criminal, "Give it up, go back to jail, do your time, and we'll figure out a way to rehabilitate you." That's kind of Batman's thing. The violence usually comes as a response to violence itself. But that has changed many, many times over the decades. But yeah, Batman wants to believe that the Joker could be saved from being the Joker. He doesn't want to absolve him of his crimes, obviously, but just if he's no longer being the Joker anymore, that's a win. And if he can do so without having to kill him, that saves Batman's soul as well as the Joker's. The only way that would ever end is if the Joker and Batman would have to die together in something that possibly either the Batman has stopped and the results in both of them dying, or the Joker has managed to succeed in something that both of them have done.
I can rehabilitate him. Nah, I'm just picking out. We got Mecha J who says, I like the fact that Andrea is voiced by Dana Delaney, the voice of Lois Lane in Superman the Animated Series. Actually, from what I read, they were so impressed with her voice work that's how she got the job.
Yeah, that is. And she was also in Tombstone with some other Batman alumni.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yes.
Lupu is here and sends in 50 Mexican dollars. That buys a couple tacos. Says, when was the Joker turned from criminal prankster to psycho murderer? Was it the death of Jason Todd or was it before? That's a good question. I would say Miller. That's one of the reasons why I kind of because
no, not really. It was O'Neill and Adams pretty much.
Was it before that?
O'Neill and Adams did some darker stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I mean O'Neill and he was starting. That was when they brought him back to his kind of slightly darker roots after the TV series. This was in the late 60s. After the TV series
like 69, 70. Yeah.
Right. Denny O'Neill, Neil Adams, and with under the auspices of the great Julius Schwartz.
See, I didn't really know he killed back then, too, so okay.
Yeah, it was in the late 60s when they were trying to get away from I love the TV shows, you can see. But when they were trying to get away from that, the cornier image of the TV show, they brought back the darker Batman, and the first story was Batman 251 by Dana O'Neill, Neil Adams, and Julius Schwartz, and it was called The Joker's Five-Way Revenge. And they brought back the scary, murdering Joker at that point. And then, of course, Englehart and Rogers, a number of years later in a short detective run, Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers, introduced the story of the Laughing Fish. Again, all stories where the Joker had started killing.
Because one of his first things was he killed people with his delayed Joker poison, and even dressed up, I think, as a judge or a cop to kill a judge.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a killer at that point.
And that was in the 40s, so
right. And then in the 60s and 70s, he got back to that. So it was only a short time that all comics were, kind of the same where they weren't allowing the darker stuff, but especially Batman.
Well, and of course, The Dark Knight, as much as I love that movie, I know it's a very different Joker. And I know you've made this argument before, too, Script, on that point. And that kind of gets more to the psycho murderer-esque type Joker, even though he doesn't kill too many people in the movie.
Oh, he in the comics, even in the 60s and 70s, he was just, I'd call him psycho because he would kill people for the fun of it or to make a point, like he would kill one of his
henchmen. Well, that's more like I
like
the 89 Batman, because that's kind of like the Bob scene. That's like a joke. That's a definite Joker scene. He's like, why didn't anybody tell me he had one of those things?
He has to let out his anger some way. Yeah,
and he's like, Bob Gunn, boom.
There's a great scene. And a great scene in a comic in the late 70s. A story was called Dreadful Birthday, Dear Joker. Simonson art, I forget the writer, where he tells a joke and one of his henchmen's not paying attention. And he goes, "You're not laughing, Sidney?" And he goes, "Oh, gee, Joker, I forgot. He says, he points a gun at it, says, "You're about to forget to breathe." And he goes, "No, please, I'm laughing." And he shoots it. And the thing that comes out that sticks out says bang.
Yep, the flag.
It comes out and he looks and goes, "Oh, great, it's not even a real gun." He says, "Oh, yes, it is, Sidney. Next shot, you don't get a good glimpse of it." Shoots it, boom, spear through. He says, "It's a spear gun."
Yep.
Right in the head. So
yeah, see, that I can see as a Joker thing. Yeah, but yeah, I think as much as I like the Nolan version, that's just more of a chaotic.
Yeah,
it's the casual interpretation of a Joker, but it's done really well. Like,
yes,
you get hooked by him. Yeah.
It's not my bag really, but it's done well.
Yeah, I would have loved it if we actually got, a twisted dark joke from Heath Ledger's performance. Like, he actually said something that was Joker-y.
Yeah.
Would have been nice.
I mean, Nicholson really did a great job of making him the Joker. He really was the Joker, even though he started out as a
little bit more Jack Nicholson than Joker.
The buzz killer, like the buzzer, the killing buzzer thing, hot under the collar.
Very Joker.
Oh, God. Very Jokery, yes.
Oh yeah. Well, he's always and he was running around making bad jokes. Very Jokery, yeah.
And when he killed that one dude with the pen right in public and shit like that too.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
The pen is mightier than the sword.
Hello.
What's his name?
Hello, Vinny. It's your Uncle Bingo. Time to pay the check. Sorry, I memorized stuff.
No, again, we're talking about Batman stories where they're quotable, and the one that's currently in theaters is not.
No.
Not for the right reasons, anyway.
Well, you got a lot of cats. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
White privilege.
That's the only quote I remember, and it's stupid.
Which is funny because every person that dies in that movie is white. So.
And the people that are such, white privileged are the ones who still privileged at the end and live. They don't even acknowledge all the other people that die. But we're not going to get into that.
Yeah,
that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about the Mask of the
Suddenly
Phantasm.
Gotham gets retaining walls like Louisiana.
Yeah.
Yes. But this one, oh gosh, I like the fact that everything is kind of set up. Like, the brilliance aspect of it is, so you have, I was talking about the scene where Batman's in the rain, he's watching Andrea Beaumont and Reeves talk, and then she says that line, "Who knows what the future will bring?" And we go to Batman in the binoculars, and then all of a sudden he's going into the past, and we're seeing his date at the world of the future, and it's like, oh, that is really clever, because it's setting up that he reads lips and that he's like, not that just that he's spying on her and all that other stuff. Like, it's showing that the audience doesn't pick it up until after, when they're in the in her apartment. He's like saying, you said you two have been closer than ever, and she's like, what, you had me bugged? He's like, I can read lips. And you're like, oh, that makes, like, you understand the connective tissue that's there as to why he was thinking of, like, he saw that word and that triggered a memory, and that justified the flashback, but it also set up so much else that's going on, because from that point, they come back from their date. She's like, let me introduce you to my dad. They meet the Valestras, and then Bruce tries to save that guy who is selling jewelry, probably stolen jewelry, oddly enough, under a bridge from those greasers. And he does okay, but again, he doesn't win. And that's 2 times we see Batman kind of barely make it out alive from a conflict.
Right. And she distracts him, so that's another thing that concerns her.
Yeah, like, through no fault of her own, she's just like going, oh my God, like, because she doesn't say his name or anything. And he just looks away for like that 1 second and then gets hit right in the ribcage with a baseball bat.
Yep.
Yeah, and I agree with you here, Dave. The Impaler says the disappearing pencil was probably the most darkly comedic Joker scene in the Dark Knight. That and the money scene, even though, like, they should have done a better job of letting people know that the guy on top of the money was burning with the money. They kind of did a poor job.
They ignored that part, yeah.
Yeah, like, that's the most Jokery part of the scene, is that the guy's on top of the money.
And I don't even think he's gagged either, so, like, he should be screaming.
That's what I said too in the movie theater. I'm like, why isn't that dude screaming his fucking head off? Like, he's burning alive. But David Thorpe, do I believe in white privilege? That's a loaded question. I believe more in class privilege and nepotism. I've been waiting for my white privilege to come along for about 40 years now. So, But no, like this is a great film. I'm sad I didn't give it more attention in the past. I will definitely watch it more often now, and it's definitely going to get me back into these series again. So,
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Whatever happened to 2D animation? Well, first of all, computers came in, and even though you can still do 2D animation with computers, studios decided about a decade or two ago that kids don't want to see 2D anymore, and they just decided to go mostly 3D. But once in a great while, you get something 2D animated. But I have this theory that one of these days, even though it's not very economical, one of these days, somebody's going to get the harebrained idea to do an animated film with hand-drawn animation and all that business, the classic style, and it's going to blow everybody away, and they're going to be like, why don't we make movies like this more often? It's like, because the computers do it now. Because there's just something different about classic hand-drawn animation compared to how smooth and perfect a computer animated film is in 2D or 3D for that matter, especially, 2D. It just doesn't look quite right. And watching this film today, again, makes me appreciate how, hand-drawn and hand-done backgrounds, especially the way this show was done, in the, paying homage to the original Superman, Fleischer cartoons and such, and it does such a great job doing that in a contrasty way as to where the Superman Fleischer cartoons were much more brighter. This actually uses black backgrounds with paint over top of it to make Gotham just seem that much more blacker than, and darker than than anything we've seen in cartoons before. It's just amazing the things that they did, just the little things that they did that to make this series stand out and above and beyond. And even this film is not really done in any way that's too much different from my recollection from the series. I don't even think they animated this at 24 frames. I think it's only 12. It looks like 12, but I mean, they just framed things a little better. They let things breathe a little bit more. But other than that, it's pretty much the series from my memory. So,
yes, I think it is.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Yep.
Because I was paying attention. I'm like, I don't even think this was done at 24 frames, but it still looks damn good.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great animation. It's great, so atmospheric. It hits on everything again. And you have to harp on this because people harp on the ridiculously long run time of the new film. This one's only 78 minutes, and it delivers. I mean, and
it's barely that because the credits are actually pretty long for a movie back then
right.
too. I noticed because it's an animated film, so
yeah, good point. Yes, yeah.
Because it's barely 2 episodes, maybe 3 at the most, if that, not even really.
That's true. Yeah. It could be cut up in some episodes, and again, it just has such a great impact. And it was, but when I first saw it, I saw some clips of it making up, but I didn't really know what to expect, and I think for some reason I didn't expect it to have that much Joker in it, and because this movie takes a while before you see Joker doesn't pop up till a little bit later.
Well, no, and I don't know if you caught that part when I said earlier I was reading, up on the film, and one of the things they had said is since it was going to be a movie, they didn't want to bring in too many of the original characters. They wanted to bring in a bunch of newer characters, and that's why Gordon only has 2 scenes. There's none of the other rogues gallery. Alfred is there, but outside of that, you really don't get any of the other traditional Batman characters. Like even Bullock is there, but barely. But that was the main thing. But Joker being such a big part of the story, I don't remember what the motivation was to bring him in per se, but it just he just happened to be there because. But yeah, I mean, he works so well in the story, and everything that's here just seems to be there so perfectly, and you don't even really care or notice that all those other characters are, and it almost adds to that this is a movie kind of feeling to it, right? I mean, because you had those kind of things back in the 80s, especially when they would do the movie of the animated shows. 9 times out of 10, that's where they'd introduce new characters. Like Care Bears the movie and like Chipmunks the movie. I remember that's when they did the new animation and they introduced a couple of new characters there and, stuff like that. I think there were some other ones too I'm trying to think of offhand. But this was, as we said, the fact that this didn't do as well really makes me sad because we could have gotten a string of animated films from from WB, and the quality of the stuff they put out for years there was great. So it is pretty sad that it didn't do better at the box office, because I think it only did like what, $15 million at the box office, something like that. I'd have to look, but I know it wasn't very much.
Yeah, well, the critical response was very good for it, I'll tell you that, but I guess that wasn't enough. They just didn't market it well. I don't know. I went as many times as I was able to go, and it was a couple of weeks.
I guess they pulled it from theaters early too, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it went up against. It actually came out in Christmas of '93.
Yeah.
What the hell came out that
I
year?
can't remember what else came out that year. That should tell you something. All I cared about was that. I mean, sure, there was some other good stuff, but I don't know. But I remember how excited I was to see that, and went back a couple of times, and brought my kids a couple of times, went with friends a couple of times, and just, fun stuff. And then it's gone. I was going to go see it again, and then it was like, wait a minute, it's already. So I was not expecting it to leave theaters that quickly, but I guess it was supposed to be a limited engagement. I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I've watched it. Of course, it wasn't long before they came out with the VHS, of course. And snapped that up and wore that sucker out. It came with a little comic book adaptation, by the way. Very small. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
Well, Philadelphia was in theaters the same time. Tombstone debuted the same time.
Yeah, I'm seeing here like
Grumpy
Mrs.
Old
Doubtfire
Men.
had been out for a little bit, but it was still
Grumpy Old Men, which did well.
Yeah.
Beethoven's Second.
Oh yeah, yeah. It had some stiff competition.
The Pelican Brief. It was
Sister Act
actually
2,
a really
Wayne's World 2.
Yeah, it was actually a really strong
Really,
Christmas season for films.
Cool Running. Well, Cool Runnings had been out for a while, looks like, but that was still playing. It says here. Yeah, Mass of the Phantasm actually did a lot less than I thought.
Wow. No, yeah, it did. And it had virtually no advertising, like newspaper articles. I don't even remember.
It didn't open in very many theaters here, so I think you're right, Clobby. It looks like it only had like 1,500 theaters.
Yeah. Limited engagement.
Yep.
For some reason.
And then it lost like almost half of those.
Mm-hmm.
By January 8th.
About a few weeks in, yep. And then on top of that, most of the scenes from Mask of the Phantasm were used by Fox Kids to promote the cartoon show.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of they didn't even use most of the stuff from the cartoon show. They're like, no, we'll just use Batman Mask of the Phantasm stuff. Yeah. Like the whole it's going to be a bumpy ride for the Joker says. I remember that spot being played all the time for Batman the animated series.
Yeah, well, I do have to correct you on one thing, Clobby, because this did start as an VHS film, actually a straight-to-video film. But as Script had mentioned earlier, Warner Brothers liked it so much they said, "Let's make it a feature film."
You mean the intent?
Yeah. So then about midway through, they had to go and reconstruct it for widescreen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No,
that's why I don't think it was actually done at 24 frames.
Okay.
Because if they were doing it for video, then like, why the fuck would they do it for 24 frames? But if they knew from the start they were going to do it for a film, then they probably would have animated it at 24 frames.
Yeah. I always thought it was just meant for a movie, but yeah, I guess so. There you go.
No, I guess that's the story of what happened.
It was going to be a direct-to-video release. But after they got a couple of they heard because they did the voicing first, and they put it all together. They did the audio cut of it, and the execs at Warner Brothers heard that, saw the storyboards, and saw a couple clips that they already had animated that came back, and they're like, "No, we got to do this as a feature film." And that was already, I think maybe 4 months in. No, not even 4 months in. Had to have been about 2.5, 3 months, because it would have taken them about a month to do the audio, get the master track for audio, just before they started doing sound mixing and everything.
Yeah.
And then it would be into animation, and it was an 8-month turnaround. So it had to have been the last 6.5 months they were actually animating for feature, and the first few scenes that they were doing were for the home video. And I only spotted 2 of those home video esque shots up-resed in the film. So that's pretty good. That shows that they either got pretty early. They've made this decision pretty early in its production, in the actual production side, but not in the pre-production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
And that's why I said I'm sure they would have decided to do it at 24 frames a second instead of.
I think they started doing that for Justice League Unlimited. Is that the Justice League show I think was 24.
Did they start using computers on that one?
It was no, they used computer inking. So computer inking started with with Superman the animated series, because I remember that was the reason they were like really happy with that show, is like they were able to save their turnaround
Well,
time by
that might answer
doing
this
digital
question
inking.
then.
Oh, simpler models made it easier and faster to animate.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was pretty much it. And the other part too, one of the issues that the production team had is that they couldn't use the same animation studio for every episode, because there was just too many episodes they had to get out, so they had to contract various other ones. And the animation studio that did Heart of Ice was so good, but they took so long that they eventually bankrupted themselves because of their turnaround. Because they did every frame. They did this special frosting technique on Mr. Freeze's helmet that took a long time, but it paid off and they loved it. But unfortunately, because they were so good, but they took so long, they couldn't sustain themselves financially, and they faded away. But every single one of those people got a job at another house and did pretty well afterwards. But yeah, it was digital inking came into effect around '95, and it was used for Superman the animated series. And then because they was able to save some time, they were able to increase their frame rate for certain stuff. Because there's some episodes of
I was gonna say,
Justice
once
League.
we get to the computer age, like that, pretty much everything's 24
Yeah,
frames.
there's some episodes in Justice League where they use computer animation for the cityscapes and vehicles, but not
Yeah.
the characters. And as a result, they're able to do 24 frames a second, because there's some scenes in Justice League Unlimited where like Black Canary is doing a fight, and it's so fluid and so well done that you're like, wow, this is like, you know, rotoscoped almost. And it's not. It's really really well done. I was quite impressed. But I think it's maybe like 22 frames as opposed to like 24, but it's really up there. And it's really impressive. So yeah, it's changed, but yeah, vehicles and structures are way better for 3D modeling than character models. Character models shouldn't be 3D, in my opinion.
I'm not a fan of the 3D backgrounds either, because I think it looks weird.
Well, the 3D
Yeah.
backgrounds are done in the same 2D style, and inking wise, they're just so exact that they don't feel that they match exactly to
That's my
everything else.
problem. Is like, yeah, stuff
Yeah.
is too perfect when it's done with the computer. That's my main. And I know it sounds fucking stupid, but it's true. It just
No, I hear you.
it loses the soul to it. There's something just missing from it. And I've heard a lot of people talk about this Cuphead show, and I'm supposed to check it out, but I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I could probably still tell it's done with a computer. So
The only time I didn't mind that mixing too much is on the late '90s Silver Surfer TV series, which was really great. It only lasted one season. They did use some CG mixing in with the 2D. It's kind of strange the way they did it
Oh, for the Power Cosmic
for
stuff, yeah.
Galactus, and yeah, but it kind of works on that show for some reason, which was a great show. I loved it. I don't mind it for that, because all the rest of the art was beautiful. The 2D stuff was beautiful. They went for like a Kirby look to it. That was a great cartoon. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that one, but
I have seen that one. I thought that was pretty cool. But funny enough that you say that. So the CGI background, the CGI model we see at Gotham in the opening credits, they were intending to use that as the background to save animation costs. And the reason they didn't, not only because it was expensive to render, is that they started seeing that in the Spider-Man cartoon show. And it didn't integrate well at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're like, we're not going to do that.
yeah, I noticed that intro, but I was like, yeah, I just kind of didn't even really think twice about it. But I just thought they were just being kind of cool with like, oh, look what we can do, because it was like the beginning of computer animation and shit. So yeah.
I mean, it's like 14 years into computer animation.
Well, I mean, it was
almost,
the same year that Jurassic Park came out, and like I said, that's why I asked you is how long before they started using, because I know they didn't so much on, as far as I know at all, at least not till near the end on Batman. So like, as I said, like how many years was it? Because I know it couldn't have been too much longer before a lot of shows did flip over to CGI. I just didn't watch a lot of cartoons then.
It took a while, because Reboot did. It was like the first CGI cartoon, which it's so weird because I saw the pilot, I know, in 1992, because it was aired on my 7th birthday. But if you go look for it, it says it came out a few years later than that. But I think they're conflating the pilot, which had years between the pilot and the actual season when it started, which is a couple years later. Because it was a Canadian animated thing called by Mainframe, and then when they did that, they did then Beast Wars, and then they did Shadow Raiders, and they were really just the pioneers in full CGI stuff, they started getting it better and better and better.
Well, I knew it had to be around that time because South Park was 97, and that was all CGI at that point. Like, the only episode that's done with the cutouts was the first one, and they're like, fuck
Well,
that.
the first one that did the film festivals, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, fuck that. That's too long. So after
And
that,
then
like...
they used basically... it was photograph CGI. So basically they photographed all the stuff, and then they used computer animation or computers to animate those cutouts until they actually changed it over.
Season 3 or 4 or something. I think the movie or something like that, they said.
When the movie came out, they'd done proper models of that style, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I knew at least by that point, in like you said, mid to late 90s, a lot of shows. Because even The Simpsons flipped over...
Well, after season 20.
I'd say it was a little later than some of the other ones, but they did, because I think they started using backgrounds first and doing the paint, like you said, and they were still doing hand drawn up to a point, and then, yeah, sometime around probably, season 20, I'd imagine. It's been so long since I watched The Simpsons, but no, I mean, the animation style of this show was like none other at the time when it came out, especially when it comes to children's animated programming. None had gotten this kind of attention, and I think that's why it resonated beyond kids. And I think parents took note of it, and because I mean, I remember even at that time, like some of my older cousins were into it, and even my adult cousin who was like my dad's age, because he was a guy who was always into like the Adam West show. I remember him taping this show, and I always thought it was kind of weird. Just like, weird. Like, grown up watches this show. Like, okay.
Yeah, yep, I did too. I recorded them all. Yeah.
But I remember the time him saying, like, yeah, this is the most closest Batman's ever been to the comics. And I remember saying something about the movie or whatever. And that was probably the first time I remember somebody saying something about the Joker killing Batman's parents and all that kind of. And it just never really clicked with me. You know, as a kid, I just saw it. I'm like, whatever, you know. It just didn't bug me then until like somebody else said something later on, and then I kind of got more into things because when I was a little kid, like I didn't really have access to comics, which sucks. So like what few I did get my hands on were just ones I'd get here and there at the grocery store if they had some, and or like my first comic ever was the famous Spider-Man one that was printed without the comics code, the drug issue.
Yeah.
We got it for free at school, I think it was. If it wasn't from school, I think my dad or mom got it from someplace or something or other. Because that was my very, very first comic. And then I had a few random ones here and there. But then Batman, I remember going to the library and having to get The Killing Joke and Dark Knight Returns graphic novels. And that shit blew my mind. Because like I had no idea that Batman would go that dark in a comic book. So that's like, you know, so like I would love to catch up if there's like certain ways you can with certain runs, but that's just the problem. You got 50, 60, 70 years of the character. It's like, where do you start, right?
Well, I mean, you technically only have like 35 years of the character.
Well, yeah, it depends. That's what I'm asking is like, where's the,
Go ahead.
Well, I would say you can start with from I would say 39 to 44 are okay because a lot of those stories are kind of just reinterpretations of other pulpy stories, but with Batman trying to find the voice and stuff, introduction of characters. And then I would probably say from 67 to 81 is probably a good foundation stuff to start from. And then there's sporadic issues all over the place that you can look for afterwards. But like I would say that's my basic.
I could throw you some recommendations of some great story runs on Batman and stuff like that if you'd like.
Yeah,
there's some good ones, and of course a lot of not good ones, but obviously
you can even buy like the Neil Adams has a whole bunch of volumes of the stuff that he's worked on. You can pick that up for a pretty reasonable price and see a bunch of great stories there as well.
Right.
Well, there's a lot of stuff. There's a bunch of hardcovers like the Len Wein ones, the Jim Aparo run, the Neil Adams run, like you say, and a bunch of other ones. So yeah, they're all kind of stuff.
I'll tell you, Neil, I really dislike reading comics on my computer, and I cannot do it on my phone. Cannot do it on my phone. I can do it to a point on my computer because if I have to, because like I've got like a couple of runs of things, and I got like all the old classic TMNT on a drive somewhere.
I am actually addicted to it now, probably because I have crappy eyesight, but also because I could blow them up. Like if I have it on my phone app, Comicology or whatever, I can sling it to the big screen TV and look at those big, beautiful
I
comic
mean,
panels blown up. I like that.
There is
And,
that part to it, but I
and, I
still
like
like
it.
owning the actual
Oh
comic
yeah,
of
no.
certain ones.
Oh, I always want to have the physicals, but if it's just for reading it, and especially like when I'm doing the show now, couple times a month now, I'm reviewing some classic comics, and sometimes I'll have Nick with me or Mark or whoever, and I'll show the pages of the comic while we talk about it, so it's useful for that as well.
But listen to me, I got shit for a collection, like compared to how, like most people. Like, no, I don't have shit for a collection.
My hard copy collection is pretty abysmal because most of my stuff was sold at a garage sale while I was away at college. But like my digital archive is huge because luckily for me, I was fortunate enough to have very short stints working at Warner Brothers, so I got a massive amount of digital DC comics to peruse, which is great. And also I have a couple of friends who managed to procure some PDFs for me. And then when I do find them on retail shelves, I buy them because I traveled basically from the Pacific Coast to the Atlantic Coast in 2002 to try and find the first prints of Batman Year One because I was being told how great of a 4-issue series that was. Nice. And I managed to find them, like all first edition stuff, and got them well taken care of. And I thought it was a pretty decent story. I did not like what happened, how Gordon was treated as a character, but I understood why it was being done that way.
Totally new template for Gordon with that comic right there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Commissioner Gordon after that point has been everything you've seen him other than the 89 movie is based on Batman Year One. Every different iteration other than Pat Hingle is pretty much based on that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Even animated series, kind of. Yeah.
Kind of to the animated series, but yeah.
Even all of them, yeah. So,
yeah.
Yep. So, I do enjoy the digital because and I got another friend of mine who's also a hardcore collector, but he likes that there's digital because his eyesight's failing, and that helps him it's tough for him to read a comic now, look at a regular comic with stuff. So
especially with some of the classics where like the lettering is not up to stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, is that a 5 or an S? Why are those words so close together?
When your eyes are starting to go, it's kind of.
No, I hear you. I have that issue too. Brian, the real reason is not so much laziness, which I mean, at first
it's consistency. Actually,
it's that and cost effectiveness because I mean it's expensive to make animation, and it's a lot quicker, cheaper to have a group of people doing it on computers than it is to have hundreds of people working on an animated, like to do, like for instance, like a standard half-hour animated show that's animated on the twos generally would take 6 months from beginning to end. So now put that into a consideration. That's why Script was saying earlier, like they had to like farm these shows out to more than one company because when you get an order for like 60 episodes and you got to get them all done in an X amount of time. You got to
get them done in that time, yeah. So you could, like your normal animated studio has enough staff to, I think, do 10 episodes every 6 months or so.
Well, basically, like The Simpsons, for instance, they would ship all their shows off to Korea, and I think at a point they got it down to like 3 to 4 months at the quickest, but they were still at 6 months most of the time for a show from beginning to end.
Yeah, I haven't worked enough in animation, like other than the cursory stuff, to really know all the details. Tom Conkle might know. He worked for one of the.
Well, I know also once you get like the models in there, they're done. Like that's how South Park gets done so quickly. Is that it's really cheap, easy animation at the side of it, but computers shave a lot of time off. You have the character models already built in 3D. Even if they're 2D animated, you still have all several angles built in or whatever. And generally at that point, there's not a lot of creation that goes into it. It's just a lot of using the assets you have, unless you have to create something for an episode. And that kind of goes back to the old mentality of what Filmation used to do, right? They did it before computers where they would just have stock animation built. They would have
that they could reuse over and over.
Yeah, they had film. What they would use rotoscoping, so that's why when Skeletor and He-Man all run, they look the same because they're using the same rotoscope for everything.
Well, yeah, they only had 4 models in total, I think.
I think so, something like that. Yeah. They had one for Tila, one for He-Man, one for Skeletor, and I think even for the one for Skeletor and He-Man were the same guy, just two different costumes. And then I don't know if they had another person with a different body type or not, but yeah, I'd have to dig out the picture to look. But no, it has more so to do with time, money now specifically, because back then it was more expensive to use computers, but now it's a hell of a lot cheaper to do it on computer than it is to do it with traditional cell animation, which is not only time consuming but very expensive. I mean, when you figure just a frame will cost you
28 cents.
At least, yeah, if not probably more now.
I think 28 cents was about 5 years ago, so it might have gone up.
Yeah.
And that's really just either a frame of the one character, not other characters in the shot. That's
Yep.
You still have the backgrounds, and you have the other characters, and you have to make sure that the points of reference are identical so that they can interact with other characters. Rarely is the same artist doing two characters in a single shot, is my understanding. But
it all depends. But yeah, you got a point there, because very rarely are two characters actually animated on the same cell, depending on what you're doing.
Yep.
So like you just said, in some cases, depending if it's a movie, like sometimes you'll have a specific animator who animates only one character throughout the entire film, so there's consistency. And then in other cases, just depends. But yeah, there's variants that go into that. So like, as opposed to a frame on a computer, which costs you barely nothing. You know, it's building the elements that go into it more so. And that's why I don't pump out more of those Batman cartoons, because it takes forever to build them and put all that stuff together. Once I get all that stuff together, animating them ain't hard. It's just getting all the stuff together is the problem. But that's basically the question there. And George, how you doing, my buddy? I see you in the chat. RTNZ sends in $2 New Zealand and says, in my honest opinion, Mask of the Phantasm is an A-rated B film, peak Batman. Indeed, it is definitely an A. I think this is one of the few times I don't think there's any debate. It's an A-rated B film. It was meant to be for video, so that puts it in the B movie range, and it was definitely given a limited release when it was released. Yeah. So, yeah.
But it really is. It like Superman the movie. It is a gold standard when it comes to Batman content.
Agreed. Absolutely.
No, I think I have to concede that this is possibly the best Batman movie ever. I always knew it was good.
At the very least, it's definitely up there. And I like the fact that, over the past, 10, 15 years, critics have been saying, like, all the Marvel movies and some of the Batman movies are taking other genres of film and putting them into superheroes. And I'm here sitting to myself thinking, well, Richard Donner's Superman is a love story, and I think they did that first. And it's a two-tiered love story, because it's the love between parents and a child, and also the love of falling in love for the first time. And the fact that in both of those situations,
it's also told in the way of an epic too, with 3 parts.
Yes, but it's also in the way of that when you fall in love, you're willing to break a number of rules in order to preserve that love. Like Jor-El's willing to break the rule with the council and send his son away. And Superman is willing to break the rule of laws of physics, so to speak, and save Lois Lane. But
that's my point. Like it's filmed like, say, like the 10 Commandments. You have like the birth of your hero, you have the growth of your hero, and then you have your hero becoming a hero. Right? Yeah. Like it's those.
And it's supposed to be told in one story, not a trilogy.
No, I know. I don't mean it like that. I just mean
you're absolutely right. You're doing the act structure.
Yeah. That epic way it was told, where it's a typical 3-act structure, but I mean it's the same way like the 10 Commandments was told. It's the way it's treated. I mean, but yeah. George sends in a holy whopping $49.99 on top of being a member. Holy crap, sir! You did not have to do that, but thank you so very much.
Hail, George!
Says, all hail, my brother Tom. Brilliant panel with an incredible take. My best to you all, the best voices online giving you top insight to the movie world. All hail Midnight's Edge After Dark, all hail panel and Bat Tom. Thank you, George. We appreciate that.
Whose logo is a still shot from Mask of the Phantasm.
It is.
It is.
Or at least the series, if not. But yeah.
No, it's from the movie.
Is that from the movie?
Okay. Yeah.
When he was on the roof watching Andrea and Matt Reeves.
Yep, and Councilman Reeves. Yes, Councilman Reeves. Right.
Arthur Reeves, yeah.
God, Arthur Reeves. It is really a great film. It's better than it should be by all accounts, really. But yeah, it's really great.
I can see why somebody was like, all of a sudden they're going, why the hell are we releasing this on video? Like, even if you just read the script, probably.
Well, I mean, it's the brilliant take. So Alan Burnett came up with this story, and he wrote primarily the Batman present day stuff, is my understanding. Paul Dini filled in some of the gaps with the Joker, and I think Martin Pascoe and Michael Reeves rotated flashbacks. But the thing is, it's all helmed by Alan Burnett, so it's a really creative, character-driven, and very crafted story. And it's one of the few instances where you like all four of these writers worked together, as opposed to some other times when you have one writer at first draft and then another writer's brought in to rewrite that, and then two other writers are brought in. This is like a very homogenized.
Well, I almost wish they would have looked at it and gone like, you know what, this should be the third Batman movie, and just replace the Joker with Two-Face or something like that.
Yeah. Wow,
like, that would have been amazing. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Script, well, always at that time script, all of them had, especially at that time, Pascoe had a long-standing background in not only screenwriting but comic book writing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you had a bunch of guys there who were pros and with comic books, especially Pascoe. Burnett a little bit, but yeah.
And it's all there on the screen. I mean, it really is.
No.
So all I can say is that yes, this is a great movie to learn craft from, as well as be completely entertaining and exercise in brevity and pace as well. And the other part too is like all the characters have very distinct voices, like Noir. So here's a fun fact. So Andrea Beaumont is not a femme fatale archetype that was later associated with Noir. She is the primary villain. Like it's basically that. She's doing all of this to try and rescue a love that was stolen from her. Like it's a revenge story, and that's what also makes me kind of think a little bit more of Out of the Past, because the female in that one is doing everything for her own personal gain. She's just manipulating all the men around her. In this case here, Andrea Beaumont is killing the three men that murdered her father and cost her the one chance at happiness she thought. And we don't even know how many years. Well, actually, we could probably assume she'd been planning this for around 8 years or so.
Because, I think she mentions like 10 years.
Well, 10 years is the timeline, but Joker says to Valestra it's been a dog's age, and that's usually a reference to 7 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, and again, if it's a dog's age since he's seen them, that means that the Joker was created around 7 years ago, so 3 years into Batman's career, which kind of I think would be is an interesting lineup for some things. And so that would probably be like Andrea Beaumont has been spending 7 years figuring out a way to do this, either like releasing her family finances, getting some additional training, maybe even learning maybe a dark arts or something, because she does these cool disappearing tricks. Who knows what it is, but she's figured this. She's been figuring this out.
Well, I would
for a
assume
while.
she had a similar path to Bruce's, and that was my point earlier, is that they just took two separate roads at one point, right? Like,
yeah, 2 different points in his life where Bruce Wayne probably spent 7 to 10 years training to become what he eventually just deduced as the Batman, and then Andrea had taken around 7 to 8 years or so to do this Phantasm thing and get it all perfectly timed, so that she can return to Gotham. Because I mean, you have to admire her end goal. Like, she's doing this to try and be with Bruce Wayne again.
Well, right, and as I said, it's very, very similar to Batman's storyline, but the difference is Batman's doing it to honor his parents and to make Gotham better and all that stuff. Her
she's doing this to go back to the past,
vengeance, and to hopefully get Bruce back. But I think once she realizes who Bruce is, that there's no getting him back. I think that's
she's still committed to that because she rescues him. So like
she does, but I think she kind of realizes at that point that there's no future for them. I think she realizes that pretty early on.
I don't think she realizes that until she goes to kill the Joker, and that stopped. Because here's my point because they are sharing similar paths. So Andrea's goal is to try and pick up where she left off with Bruce. That's going back to the past. Batman's goal is to change the city so that the events that happened to him don't happen again. Like, there's completely, one's proceeding with the future in mind, the other one's proceeding with a reset in mind. And that is where these two characters diverge, and why they'll never be together. It's because she's dwelling on the time she lost, and Batman is trying to take advantage of the time he has. And that's kind of like the really interesting motivations between these two different characters.
Yes.
Because, I mean, she has this great, like, as soon as Batman leaves, she collapses onto her bed and starts crying because she's like, I can't believe I had to say this to him because I have to complete this mission and maybe I can rebound after that. And she almost does when she saves Bruce. And then you also have the implication that they spent the night together, quite obviously. Like, she's wearing Bruce's like dress shirt sitting out on the terrace in the morning.
Right.
And she actually says to Bruce, like, she's willing to say, you know, Daddy doesn't matter anymore, which means she's like, it's a double entendre. Like, he's dead, but she's also saying like he doesn't matter anymore, so much so that she's willing to pin these murders on him so that she can be in that moment and forever in that moment. And it's like top tier writing that, again, it's absolutely brilliant. And it's showing that she's kind of, it's showing actually the consequence of revenge and vengeance, which is that you are in a state of arrested development. You are not getting past those needs, and you never will, even once you achieve them, because the consequences are so great. It's really, really great stuff.
It is indeed.
All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping things up here soon, but I think George wanted to hop in quick since he does have the Batman icon.
Sure,
I don't think I can resist that for him. So you do have the link, my friend, if you're still listening, and you can hop in and give your thoughts real quick on Batman Mask of the Phantasm. But in the meantime, let's get your final thoughts, Clobbering, since we kind of got mine and scripts already, it seems like.
Well, I just, again, this anytime anyone says, well, what do you want on a Batman movie? I just mentioned this. For me, the animated series, and this is coming from someone with mostly a comic book background, but I do consider animation the close cousin to comic books, the comic book art form. Definitive Batman to me, of course, Englehart Rogers Batman, some of the O'Neill Adams, some of that stuff, and animated series are definitive Batman for me. The way I think he should be, the way I think he is his best iteration in terms of the Dark Knight detective version of the Batman, which is his primary origin, taken from pulps and taken from many different characters, though he was. Batman animated series is the epitome of that, and this movie is the ultimate of that series. Other episodes that I think might be a little bit better than this in terms of story, yes, but this is a great representative of that show and that iteration. And it's just, this is just as Englehart and Rogers run is always rightly called definitive Batman for comic books. I consider this to be definitive Batman for cinema and small screen. And just for me, that's what I want out of Batman, which is why I actually love animation for a lot of other characters too, usually way better than I love them for live action. So this is just a great film to me. It has a great feel to it. The fact that it doesn't have to take 3 hours to make its point, it can do it in 70 plus minutes and be just as potent. And also, by the way, I would say this, it's also the limit to where the darkness of Batman should go. Going too far, which I think a lot of the other films do, also hurt it. This is dark enough without going too dark for Batman, which I love.
It's a very adult story without adult meaning,
without gratuity.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which I don't need the gross crap, really, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't need the gross crap. I don't need the stuff that's like pretty much risque for the sake of being risque.
Right.
You don't need that stuff. There's such thing as nuance, and I mean the concept of sexiness is very much nuance. It's about the implication of what could be or what has happened, as opposed to just the blatant act itself.
And you even get Batman kicking ass. Like, I love that bit where he steps on the
table.
Stomped on the table. Yeah,
doesn't he have to
made
take
me
the gun
laugh.
away? Just like
I love what few elements they used from year one are really one. Of course, obviously, when he first goes out without the costume and realizes later when he talks to Alfred they weren't afraid. I mean, you guys have touched on all this stuff. I love the scene where after she dumps him and he decides to, even though early on Alfred says, "I'm sure they would have wanted you to be happy." Certainly that was later, actually. But when we see him first put on the costume, the mood, the tone of that scene it's just with that great Shirley Walker score. When he puts on the mask for the first time and it's just silhouette, and Alfred says, "My God," it's overly dramatic in the best of ways. And I just adore that scene.
It's a great scene because it's like, it's a little bit of a defeat for Alfred, but at the same time a fascination, because he's basically seeing like, oh man, like for the last few months, Bruce has been acting normal and great and happy and everything that I know his family would want for him. And then as soon as he puts on that cowl, he's like, I guess it's all gone. And then what we get
Yeah.
at the very end is Alfred realizing it's not all gone, it's never left. He's just found a different form to channel it. And that's the whole speech of walking the abyss every night and you've never faltered. It's like that shows how
Indeed.
brilliant this
And
movie
that's why
is.
I'm not so sure if I agree with you that she ever thought it was going to work. I feel like she was just giving him one last goodbye. I mean, I'm really not so sure she ever thought, because I think she knew. And then what really set her off is when, because I was sitting there trying to question, did she know about her boyfriend being involved before, or did she need Bruce to tip her off to that? Because, or Joker to tip her off to that, the same way Bruce was. Because that was the thing, is I just don't feel like she was ever really, like she kind of felt like it was her fault to begin with that it didn't really happen, even though it was vicariously through her father. But I think she knew that he's already married to Batman. This is never going to happen. Same thing with, she's already committed to what she's doing. I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, there's that little moment, but I feel like that was more of a goodbye to me than a
That's not really a goodbye. That's a
reconciliation.
proposition, essentially. That's exactly. I mean, the concept is that
Maybe I got to
Daddy doesn't-
rewatch the bit again, but
it's basically a proposition. Like she's there, willing to live with this secret, and be the old role of Andrea Beaumont, with Bruce Wayne until she dies. She's willing to take that to the grave with her, so long as she doesn't do anything to tip Bruce off, because she does remark that he's the world's greatest detective. like
Right.
she understands what situation she's in. She's just hoping against all odds that she can pull this off. And
Yeah.
all three are dead. And if she didn't go after the Joker at that one point, it probably would have ended there, and she would have been with Bruce, and they would have figured something out. But
Right.
again, she had to go after the actual,
The
man
killer.
that
Yeah.
killed her father, and that's what let it all fall apart.
well, I'll concede this one because you probably seen
Yeah.
it 20 more times than I
No,
have.
I
so.
think she was holding out some hope, actually.
Yeah.
That if because remember when she goes off to take care of the Joker, Batman hasn't figured it out yet, and he figures it out when he starts looking at that picture over and over again. So she knew she was going to go out there either way and go after Joker either way. However, she didn't. She wasn't a. She knew he was the world's greatest detective, but she still was kind of hoping he wouldn't show up and she'd be able to just take out the Joker by herself. Of course, she didn't know what she was stepping into, did she? She didn't. I don't think she knew Batman was going to be there 100%, but she wasn't surprised when he got there either. But
Yeah.
I think if she had been able to get there and take him out, then she would have gone back and tried to stay with him, be with him.
Well,
Well,
and
yeah,
I
I
never
mean,
understood. Yeah, go
When
ahead.
she drives away, she says, "I'll see you tonight." Like and all he did was just
Yeah.
do his own following up as he does as Batman. And when he goes to her apartment and to further the investigation, because something's just not, because he deduces that the Joker was one of them Valestra's bodyguards, essentially. That's when Joker's phone call comes in and everything kind of falls into place. And the only clue that he has that Joker is at the future is the fact that it's the World's Fair future helicopter carrying a Joker bomb. And he's like, well, where would he have gotten
Yeah.
that? Well, from the place I took Andrea all those years ago.
Gotcha. Yep.
So yeah, it's again, it's all well structured and everything has that proper cause and effect. And I mean, yeah, there is a great what if story, which is what if Andrea stopped after Joker killed Valestra for her and never did don that costume again and stayed with Bruce? Would Bruce still be Batman? Would he have found a different way? Would he have handed his cowl off to Dick Grayson, who was away at college during this time of this story? Like, what would he have done? That's an interesting aspect to explore.
Indeed. Absolutely. It was again, anyone who has not seen this one, you want to see Batman at his best. Yeah, please. Tom,
Yeah.
you there?
Yeah, no, I can't
Yeah,
recommend
highly
it
recommend
enough.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just checking with George if he was going to hop in or not, because otherwise we're going to wrap it up here. because this is the longest A-rated B movie we've ever had, and it is the
That's my
shortest
fault.
movie we've ever reviewed. No, it's just there's just so much to talk about. That's what I was saying before. There's more going on in the 70-some minutes of this movie than all of the Batman. And as I said to script earlier, I don't remember if you were in here yet. I said, like, you take one of the dozen plot lines that are in this movie, and that's a movie now, right? Like, that's how lazy they are. It's like, this is so intricate and so woven and so well done, and wraps up, doesn't feel like there's, you know, something missing too much.
And it's really simple overall. When you just step back, it's basically woman seeks revenge for the murder of her father and tries to rekindle the lost love as a result of that act. I mean, it's a great story. I mean, we're literally looking at a female-led villain, and it's not the first, and it won't be the last. But, you know, if it was live action today and done, it'd be touted about for all the wrong reasons, as opposed to what it really is. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and you said she's not a classic femme fatale, but she does play a similar role in a lot of noir films, and that is where she's usually in on something and she's trying to play somebody as a patsy.
The love interest knows far more than what any other character around her does. Like, that's an interesting trope that's usually in
much like Jessica Rabbit was used, and etc. But yeah.
Yes, indeed. And I think what Odd Man Out was wondering, do you think Andrea honestly thought she could drop the? Well, I think she might have been a little arrogant. Yeah, I mean, she probably thought she was all, you know, she didn't know the Joker like Batman does.
That is true. Yeah,
might have been a little overconfident.
Then Blue Satoshi sends in $2, and yeah, we brought this up earlier, but it bears bringing up again. The Phantasm reappears in the series finale of Justice League Unlimited. Yes. And then I believe there's also a storyline that carries into Batman Beyond that you guys were talking about earlier too. Besides the comic that script was talking about.
Yeah, Justice League Unlimited, or not Justice League Unlimited, Justice League Unlimited has an epilogue story, which is a Batman Beyond episode.
It's basically a penultimate to the final finale of the series, actually, though.
Yeah.
Remember they did that? Then they did the final one with Darkseid.
Yeah, because then they did another season after that episode, I think.
No, yeah, wasn't the one before the very final episode that he's talking about, the series finale with Darkseid? Wasn't the Phantasm one on before that? I can't remember now, but it was
I remember seeing that, and then I remember
the Batman Beyond
another season worth of episodes at Apocalypse, and it had their base on Earth and all that stuff.
Right. Anyway, great stuff though, and that JLAU was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they did a pretty decent. I mean, they definitely tried to reconcile a lot of fan issues with Batman Beyond. It was all right story. I mean, you know,
yeah.
Terry McGinnis is a pseudo clone of Bruce.
Yes. Yep.
Just so there's a lot of weirdness of that. And, yeah.
Yeah.
I understood. I appreciate the concept of Batman Beyond, but it just feels very antithetical to Batman.
Yeah, the best stuff was old Bruce for me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a love-hate relationship with those future stories like that.
Yeah, I hear you.
I understand that completely. Yeah.
Yeah. Bryant wants to know what movie we're doing next. Well, we already know. And this was Script Doctor's choice, if you want to let him know.
Yeah, we're going to be doing the Poseidon Adventure, which does have an actor from this movie in it. The voice of Commissioner Gordon is in. Bob Hastings is in the Poseidon Adventure.
And you know, and Commissioner Gordon is in his first DC character to voice.
Mm-hmm.
He also did the voice of Superboy in the 60s Filmation cartoon when he was a young lad.
That is correct.
Oh, really?
So, and it's also got Gene Hackman, who, of course, legendary for Lex Luthor as well, and
Gene Hackman in general.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the start of the Disaster movie. Is the creation is pretty much a result of Irwin Allen's The Poseidon Adventure. So yes, we'll be taking a look at that next.
Cool, great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. So yes, hopefully you can join us for that. And yeah, it doesn't appear like George is going to be hopping in here, so he must have got on the phone or busy with something. But I appreciate all you guys showing up today. We love doing this show, and hope to see you next time. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Clobby for hopping in here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And lending your vast knowledge of comic books and Batman to the equation.
You're too kind. Thank you.
And of course, people should check out your channel, especially for any deep dives on comic books. And I'm sure you'll probably do at some point, probably a video on what's the best Batman run.
Well, last Monday night, Purple Valkyrie joined me, and we did talked a lot of Batman. So yeah.
So if that's probably the best place to look for that info, kids. And of course, Script Doctor has a channel as well.
I do, where I analyze and review film and television. Again, it's a dormant channel at the moment because I'm doing real work right now, and not real work as in real work. I mean, as in like scripting real work.
Hollywood.
Because YouTube is real work as well. It's it's YouTube real work and then real world real work. So, yeah, gotta go where the paychecks lead.
Indeedy do. So can't wait to see what you got up your sleeve. But other than that, I want to thank everybody once again. Take care of yourselves and each other. And until next time, go to the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.